Your list of nonsense that you are spewing out.
I'm not sure how Jonathan still comes on these shows and defends that kind of barbarism.
Slanted and biased, and you know, I read parts of your book, and I know exactly what you're doing.
Watched it, Jonathan.
What we're in for a long battle. I think that we're in for more fighting. The next step is indeed Iran.
No one trusts anything Jonathan's saying.
Actually, many people do trust what I and my peers say. What is it that you stand for? What do you represent? What
Human
are
rights,
the values that
dignity,
you stand
equality.
for?
Shameful.
It's such
Jonathan.
a nonsense talking
You should be
point.
ashamed of yourself.
The US has ordered Israel to urgently boost aid to Gaza or face having some military assistance cut off. It comes after reports that Benjamin Netanyahu was considering a surrender or starve plan to choke off aid to the north, leaving hundreds of thousands without food or water to flush out Hamas terrorists. Israeli officials have told their US counterparts they won't enact that plan. But frankly, that's what they tend to say about most of their escalations just before they happen. In the past few days, 4 Israeli soldiers were killed, 58 more badly injured in a Hezbollah drone attack. The UN, meanwhile, has condemned a large number of civilian deaths caused by Israeli strikes, including one that hit a Gazan school. With the conflict now at its most dangerous juncture, I'm joined by 2 of the most accomplished advocates for their relative positions. Jonathan Conricus is a retired lieutenant colonel, an international spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces. And Mehdi Hasan is editor and CEO of Zateo News. Well, welcome to both of you. It should be a fascinating debate. I hope, unlike some of my debates on this, it doesn't descend into talking over each other and ad hominem too much.
It definitely will, dude. Mehdi Hasan, that's all he does.
And I say that as a compliment, having interviewed you both multiple times. But Mehdi, let me start with you about where you feel we are now. It seems to me that where we are is that Benjamin Netanyahu, having been very unpopular with Israeli people, following the attacks on Hezbollah, the pager attacks, and then following up with the strikes on Hezbollah leadership and so on, he's suddenly seen a massive spurt in his popularity, and that seems to have emboldened him now to potentially go for broke with Hamas, with Hezbollah, with the Houthis, and ultimately potentially with Iran directly. Is that your reading of this, and how dangerous is that as a moment for the world?
Thanks, Piers. We're in a very dangerous moment for the world. Anyone who thinks otherwise is crazy. I've spoken to Middle East experts who say they've covered the region for decades and they've never seen it boiling like it is now. We could be on the verge of a much wider regional war than Israel has already created. And yes, Benjamin Netanyahu, anyone who follows Netanyahu's career, I think is well aware of the fact that he is a self-serving cynic. He, like Donald Trump, cares about himself more than he cares about his party or his people or his country. And we all know that he's carried on this war partly, not only, but partly because he wants to stay out of prison himself. He wants to keep his far-right fascistic coalition together. And of course, escalating as we get closer to an American election helps him, because as even Joe Biden apparently has acknowledged in private, he's trying to get Donald Trump elected. So for Netanyahu, there's a wide variety of domestic political reasons that help him extend the war. As you say, people tend to rally around in times of war when Iranian rockets or Hezbollah rockets are dropping on Israelis. Israelis, of course, are going to rally around their government. That's only natural. That happens in every country in the world. So, of course, it helps Netanyahu. He's the ultimate cynic.
Jonathan Kimrikis, I mean, a lot of people think that. And it's hard not to deduce that that is what's driving him, not least because at the end of all this, Benjamin Netanyahu will face a moment of reckoning with the Israeli people for what happened on October the 7th, which many still blame him for in terms of a massive security failure on his watch. But also he's facing corruption charges, which have all been delayed pending resolution of the military conflicts. There's not really much incentive for him to bring any of this to an end, is there?
Yeah, you know, never was a spokesperson for Netanyahu, and I certainly don't intend to be. And I think it's a bit flat to analyze everything happening in the Middle East only from Netanyahu's perspective and then dress everything up as if it is all related in some, you know, mystical way, like the Elders of Zion type of thinking. I would offer, you know, a different military way of looking at it. And when I see what Israel is doing, there's a lot of sense. For the first time in 11 months, or in a year after 11 months, Israel actually started gaining success against Hezbollah, and success leads to success. And when you succeed on the battlefield, you want to make sure that you exploit your enemy's weakness. That's what's happening now. I don't think that even Mehdi and other people can blame Israel for being attacked by Iran, or actually maybe Mehdi can, but I don't think that any reasonable person can say, well, Israel is at fault for Iran twice firing missiles on all over Israel. So what Israel is doing is defending itself against Iranian attacks, first and foremost Hamas, and Hamas is down but not out, and now dealing very lately, but and after a long period of time of 70,000 Israelis being evacuated from their homes for 11 months, but dealing with Hezbollah as well. And I think that in the coming days, or maybe a little bit more than that, Israel will expand its defenses to the real destabilizing factor in the Middle East, which is Iran. And to put everything within the Netanyahu context, I think it's a bit, intellectually lazy and flat. There's so much more to it, and it really takes away agency and responsibility from all of the other actors that are attacking Israel. The Gaza and the Hezbollah and the Houthis and the Iranians and Iraqis and Syrians, all of these, they have no agency, they have no responsibility, they all are part of the Netanyahu show. I find that a bit hard to believe, and I think it's kind of a lazy argument to be making.
All right, Mehdi, your response to that?
Well, let's just deal with the agency issue first, a few things. One is, a lot of those groups you mentioned have all said that their fighting with Israel is tied to what's happening in Gaza. Many of them have offered the Houthis, Iran, and I said this to you, Piers, last time I came on the show, and you said, how can we trust them? I said, don't trust them, but call their bluff. They've all said, you end the genocide in Gaza, you end the violence in Gaza, you get a ceasefire, and we will stop fighting with Israel.
Which genocide?
NBC
The one
News
that
reported,
Hamas started on the 7th?
The
genocide that Hamas started on the 7th?
The genocide that your country's being investigated. Can I finish a sentence? The genocide that your country is being investigated for the International Court of Justice right now.
Jonathan, let Mehdi finish his point. Jonathan, I'll let you respond after Mehdi finishes his point.
Yeah.
Mehdi.
I barely started, but he doesn't want people to hear what's going on. All of those groups have said they'll stop if Israel stops its genocide in Gaza. NBC News reported that Israel killed Nasrallah because he said I'm only going to do a deal with you if you do a ceasefire in Gaza. I want to link a ceasefire in Lebanon with a ceasefire in Gaza. And the Israelis told NBC News that's why we killed him. So we know that these groups have agency. Israel has agency. Jonathan Conricus wants your viewers to believe that Israel just blindly, Israel was just minding its own business and Iran attacked it. Israel attacked Iran first. In Syria, they bombed an Iranian consulate in violation of the laws of international law and international diplomatic law. Yeah, they killed Iranians in Iran. They then bombed Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. They bombed the Iranian capital. And then they bombed Beirut and killed a senior Iranian general. So actually, it was Israel that's been provoking. And when he talks about source of destabilization in the region, everyone in the region knows it's Israel that's destabilizing the region. It's Israel right now that's escalating wars in multiple countries. Everyone around the world knows it's Israel that's the country that is causing the issues. 40 countries, Piers, 40 countries have just put out a statement on Saturday saying, can Israel please stop attacking UN peacekeepers, blue helmets? So please don't give us lectures on who is stabilizing, destabilizing the region. And final point, as for winning, the Israeli general who ran the Gaza division, Gadi Shamni, says Hamas is winning, Israel is losing in a big way. Those are his words, not my words.
Jonathan, your response?
Yeah, just out of respect for you, Piers, I didn't interrupt the second time, even though Mehdi's statement was littered with so many lies that are in fact quite ridiculous.
As were yours.
Israel was indeed minding its own business. Israel was indeed minding its own business on the 6th of October when Hamas, with a genocidal intent, invaded into Israel and butchered Israeli civilians. Israel was also minding its own business along the Lebanese border when on the 8th of October, Hezbollah started firing at Israeli civilians and military and eventually forced about 70,000 Israelis to flee their homes after many of them were killed. Israel was also minding its own business for many years and has, as you are well aware, no, Mehdi, let's agree not to interrupt. I refrained from interrupting you. I refrained from interrupting you, even though you said so many horrible and very flat lies, and I'll continue not interrupting you if you do the same. Right. And by the way, speaking about the
That is so telling, though. Like, this Mehdi is such a piece of shit. Like, it's so telling that he just says, oh yeah, but so are you. Okay, but you're not supposed to lie. Like, okay, it's fine if you're saying he lies and he lies, that's bad for him. You're not supposed to then just make up more lies. That's such a retarded fucking answer, bro. That is actually, like, in answers like that, you can tell how much worth these people have, and it's very little.
I live in the region, my children are here, you do not. And I don't know how many people you know and see from both sides of these different conflicts. I know people from both sides and I speak with them and I live here. So I don't think that you're in a position to be lecturing anybody about what's really happening in the region. I am the one who is running with my family to bomb shelters when Hezbollah fires missiles and when the Iranians fire missiles and when Hamas fires missiles. I am the one who has family who has been evacuated from the north. I am the one who has close relatives and friends who were massacred on October the 7th. Don't lecture me about who is the source of instability. I agree with you that a lot of countries and a lot of dark people have a problem with the Jews living in their ancestral homeland. But that doesn't make it wrong that we're here. We're going to continue to be here and continue to defend ourselves despite the likes of you and despite our enemies. And I'll tell you that our history is so full of people that wanted to kill Jews and wanted to force us out of our homeland. But we're back, we're here, and we intend to continue to stay here, despite the best efforts of Iranians and Syrians and Lebanese and Gazans and others.
Mehdi.
So I do need to respond to that. So first of all, as for lecturing you, as I say, 40 countries put out a statement, including many of your own allies, including Hungary, one of the most pro-Israeli countries in Europe, saying stop attacking UN peacekeepers. These are not dark anti-Semitic forces. You can't keep playing an anti-Semitism card and undermining the very real struggle against anti-Semitism by using it to defend a government that is full of some of the most racist people, anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, anti-Christian people on the face of this planet. You were spokesman for a government that contains people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, open racists, prosecuted for inciting terrorism. So we're going to talk about lectures. You should keep your lectures to yourself and be embarrassed for the government you served. As for you living in the region, the problem is not you living in the region. The problem is the army you served and the country you were a spokesman for illegally occupies other people's lands in the West Bank, in Gaza, in the Golan Heights, now in Lebanon again. You are the country that is illegally occupying other people's lands. It's not about you living in your homes, it's about you taking other people's homes. It's about Israel now aiming to annex Gaza, according to Haaretz this week, that Netanyahu no longer has any interest in saving the hostages, as he never did, and is eyeing annexation of Gaza, to quote the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. And if we're going to talk about people dying on October the 7th, some of us have condemned that. Some of us oppose that. You only oppose attacks on Israel. You support attacks on non-Israelis. On Monday, let's say his name. Let's say his name. Shaban Ahmed, 19 years old. No. You don't get to interrupt me. Sorry, you do not get to interrupt. You have to get taking the high ground on interruptions. On night, you'll come back in. Piers will bring you back in. I'm going to finish my point uninterrupted. Otherwise, don't be a hypocrite, as well as someone
This
who
guy's
represents
such a piece
facts.
of shit, man.
A 19-year-old.
I can totally see why this guy believes in a winged horse that came down from heaven to get his little fairy godfather away from there.
Young man, Shaban Ahmed, was a software engineering student.
You're the one who is
Can I
paid by
finish my
fascists and
sentence,
they will
Piers,
get
or is it going to be
right.
one way?
Jonathan, just wait, Jonathan. I will
Piers,
bring you. You
Piers,
can
you
respond
can't
to
tell me
all
not
of
to
this.
interrupt, otherwise this conversation will...
No, Mehdi, finish your point, and I'll bring
19-year-old
Jonathan
student.
in.
Oh,
I
please
will.
don't
Yell-
threaten-
yell
I
to
will.
Daddy.
We
Don't
know
worry,
you want
Piers,
to
I
be
will.
Daddy's
so
interrupting me.
desperately.
Okay, Mehdi,
A
finish your point.
19-year-old... You keep interrupting, Jonathan. People can see what a hypocrite you are. 19-year-old student, Shaban Ahmed, software engineering student at Al-Azhar University. Jonathan's military destroyed his university, destroyed his house, displaced him, made him homeless 5 times over the past year. On Monday, the world, we all watched him burn to death thanks to Israelis bombing the area outside the hospital. He was on an IV, on a bed, in a tent. He burned to death. His mother died. 2 other, maybe 3 other people died. I'm not sure how Jonathan still comes on these shows and defends that kind of barbarism and open war crimes. I'm not sure how Jonathan sleeps at night watching people burn to death thanks to the military that he served and is now being investigated both at the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court.
Jonathan?
Yeah, speaking about serving, and then I'll address the points that you've mentioned. Speaking about serving and standing up for something, I indeed served for 24 years in the IDF, and I'm a proud Israeli Zionist, and I'm a proud Israeli patriot. And I also am very proud of my service, including as a spokesperson, but also including as a combat officer in the IDF. I know what I stand for. I'm asking, what do you stand for? What kind of values do you stand for?
I don't stand for killing civilians like your military. I don't support raping detainees like your military did.
You'll get to answer.
Well, Jonathan, did you witness rape? You were a combatant officer.
Mehdi,
Did you witness the rape of detainees?
Mehdi, you will get
You asked
to
me a
answer.
question.
Mehdi, I'm not done.
This guy, and then he pulls his face like, God, you fucking retard, bro. Like,
not
fucking
done.
hate
No,
that
no,
guy so
I
speak
much.
if you
stand
don't want
for a
answers.
country that is Mehdi. You spoke, now I speak. I ask, and I will ultimately would like to hear your answer to it. What values you represent? What civilization do you represent? Which country do you represent? Which religion do you represent? And what do you stand for? What do you defend? I know what I do. I'm part of a democracy in the Middle East, and I stand for a military that defends its population against some of the most vile terrorists in the world, including Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iranian propped-up terrorists. And I am happy and proud to be part of that organization, as I've been over many years. And if you and I were race car drivers, Mehdi, and each of us had a patch sewn onto our little uniforms that indicated who gives us money and who sponsors us, I would have one patch of my country and I would have one patch of my employer. That would be it. How many patches would you have? How big would the Qatari patch be on your clothes? And how big would foreign investment in whatever it is that you're doing and whatever it is that you're representing, how much would that be of what you do? Because you place yourself as if you are above and as if you are entitled to criticize everything that Israel does. And I ask, what are your motives and who pays for what you do?
So it's a very simple answer, as I told Jonathan Levine of the New York Post. And I love this new talking point, Piers. It's got around the right-wing media and the pro-Israel people. I run a company called Zeteo. People can check it out, zeteo.com. It's a great media organization getting very good press from the Washington Post and others. There are no foreign investors. They're all American investors. I'm an American. You asked the question. I know you can't handle brown people, being part of the West. I'm an American. I'm a Brit. I was born in the UK. I'm now an American taxpayer. And I'm very concerned with American taxes going towards the funding of a genocide in Gaza, going towards the killing of a 19-year-old guy who's in an IV in a hospital bed, going towards the killing of children in a school, going towards the killing of 23 people from one family in Lebanon Monday. In northern Lebanon, 23 people bombed by your military. 2 babies killed, Jonathan. That is what you stand for. You serve the IDF, the Israeli military, which, as I say, is being investigated at the ICJ, and the ICC. You serve a military that has been credibly accused by the United Nations just last week, by Israeli media, which showed videos of mass rape of Palestinian detainees. The New York Times this week reported that your military sent children, Palestinian children, as human shields into booby-trapped tunnels and buildings. Is that what you did, Jonathan? Can you tell us today, did you ever send a Palestinian child as a human shield into a tunnel? Because the New York Times is saying your military did that. The World Food Programme is saying your military is starving the people of northern Gaza. Did you starve people when you were in the military, Jonathan? What do you stand for? Starvation? Mass rape? Ethnic cleansing? Genocide? Every human rights group in the world says your military is an abuser of human rights. I don't know how many human rights you yourself have personally abused. I don't know if you turned a blind eye to rape on your custody. I don't know if you killed children at cold blank, at point blank range like Israeli snipers did to people carrying white flags. You can tell us today how many people you've killed or how many people you've tortured. I'll be all day.
Listen, Mehdi, sometimes enough is enough, and
we saw
your
it with our own
level
eyes.
of vitriol
We saw a woman
is
with a white
absolutely
flag.
respond, Mehdi.
Jonathan, we've
Mehdi,
seen
Mehdi,
what
let Jonathan
peers have
respond.
seen people.
All right, you've
Mehdi,
asked questions, Mehdi. Let him
Mehdi,
We've
respond.
seen
what you are
people gunned
saying
down
is
with white flags.
All right, Mehdi, let him
Mehdi,
respond.
It's all
What you
documented.
are saying, your list
all
of false
documented.
allegations and your list of nonsense that you are spewing out,
Everything
of
true.
unfounded things, that the fact that someone wrote it doesn't make it true. All of these things that
No, we
say
saw
are
people with
sheer
white
and
flags
utter
gunned down in front of our eyes.
by someone.
Jonathan,
by
Piers has seen it, and
by
I've seen it,
someone.
and everyone watching this show has
All
seen
of
it.
what you are saying is slanted and biased, and I
Unarmed
read
people
parts of your
gunned
book,
down
and I
on
know
camera.
exactly what you're
We
doing.
watched it, Jonathan.
What you're doing is trying to use.
Thank you for reading the
what
book.
you're
It's called
doing
Win
is
Every
trying
Argument,
to use
and you're losing.
it. Yes, yeah. Well, let other peoples be the judge of
Well,
that.
Piers can
Mehdi,
tell
not
us.
yourself.
Piers can tell us.
But what I can
Piers,
say,
have you watched people,
Yeah.
unarmed people, gunned down by the IDF? Piers, why don't you
Mehdi,
jump in as a
I'll
moderator
tell you what.
and clarify
I'll tell
who's
you
telling
what,
the truth?
Mehdi. I can say categorically, Mehdi, that under the circumstances that Israel finds itself under, I cannot think of any military that would behave in a more humane way. And I say that in
You keep telling
100%
yourself that.
sincerity,
The
without
international,
blinking.
the International
Yes,
Criminal Court Chief
I have
Prosecutor
told it,
disagrees with you,
and I will
Jonathan.
Yo,
continue
explicit,
to
sorry.
say it, Mehdi, and I will continue
How
to
you
say
doing,
it,
sir?
Whatever makes you feel
despite
good.
for Hamas and Hezbollah
I spaced
and
out.
Iranian apologists like yourself, and I will continue to say it.
This
and
fluid shit is
know
doing
that
my
I
head.
stand on
Iranian
firm
apologist.
ground. Is
Link
Israel
Mornington. Oh, with the
Israel
fucking-
perfect? Do we
Piers said,
never
don't do
make
ad hominem.
mistakes?
How am I
Definitely
Iranian
Wait,
not.
is that the one from
Israel-
Harry
Well,
Potter?
you just said that Israel was the one that
Keep
attacked
attacking me,
Iran
Jonathan.
when Iran
That's
was minding
factually
his own
true.
business, which is
Facts
absolutely
Yeah, I
true.
haven't
about
seen it,
your
no.
feelings, Jonathan. April
No,
2024.
You are the
Israel
one
did
who's
bomb
It's like,
an
don't
Iranian
watch it on
consulate in
stream, so,
Syria.
Mehdi, you are the
I'm
one
just saying
who's
facts.
only trying to
Did
play
Israel
on
attack?
feelings and on sad
right.
stories.
If you don't
I
wanna
could
respond
give
to any
you
facts, it's up to
dozens
Piers and his show
of
and his audience.
horrible.
Here's what I
will.
think, guys.
If you
I think
stop
it's,
interrupting, I will.
this was working very powerfully when you give each other the chance to respond to each other. Okay, you both feel very strongly
Okay, so
about
let's
it.
do that from now.
You both have passionate
Okay,
views.
let's
I
do that
understand
from
that.
now.
You disagree with each other. I think for the audience at home watching, if you talk over each other, we lose it.
Well,
So-
Jonathan can't stop being late.
Well, Jonathan,
Stop
you-
being ad hominem. Jonathan
So
can't stop
I
being
Mehdi,
late.
hang on,
let me
Mehdi.
then
What the
talk.
fuck am I
Let
supposed to
Jonathan
expect?
finish his let Jonathan
Let me
finish,
talk then.
and then Mehdi
Okay.
respond.
Well,
Jonathan,
let's-
finish your
yeah.
point.
But I've acknowledged the
So
race.
I think that what you've said is a laundry list of some of the low-hanging fruit and the concoctions that have been made up against Israel. Some of it may have a kernel of truth, and there may have been 10 soldiers who did something, and there may have been other soldiers who did something else that was wrong and that they shouldn't do. Is it common practice? No. Is it something that is sanctioned by the IDF? No. You tell us the sad story of the Palestinian who was unfortunately killed in the Israeli strike, or as a by-result of an Israeli strike in Deir el-Balach yesterday. He was killed not because he was a target. He was killed because Hamas ammunitions that were stored by Hamas in close proximity to that location exploded. The IDF fired 2 small bombs at that location, and they wouldn't have
Politics.
exploded and caused that kind of fire had it not been for Hamas weapons there. If you care about Palestinian civilians, and as a human being, I was sad to see. I saw his video before. He looked like a very nice and decent human being, and it's sad that he and his family were killed. I saw the movie of burning people. It hurt me as a human being as well, and I wouldn't want to see it again, and I wouldn't want that to be reality in Gaza. But the reason that happened isn't because the IDF is fighting there. It's because Hamas is storing weapons there, and they're abusing humanitarian facilities, and they're using schools and mosques and whatever is left of hospitals in order to fight from. And then the IDF targets where the Hamas
swear,
is
bro,
fighting
this fluid
from.
shit?
And unfortunately,
Jesus.
people have gotten wounded. I regret
Complicated.
that. I know for certain that that wasn't the intention of the IDF. It's a very sad and regrettable side effect of that happened. And I'm sure that the IDF will be extra careful in the next time that they attack. But it doesn't make it deliberate. But I think it's hypocritical of you, and I will finish. I think it's hypocritical of you, Mehdi, that you don't speak about the fact that why are they there in the beginning? Why are there ammunition stored in a hospital? Why is Hamas using hospitals to fight? Isn't that something that
I don't even know where the fuck I'm gonna store all these dudes.
A highfalutin person like you?
Okay,
What the
Mehdi,
fuck?
your response.
So first of all, that's false. Even the Israeli military hasn't claimed it was ammunition. There's a debate about what the secondary explosions caused. It could have been the gas cylinders that people were using. But the issue is you're bombing areas of tents and hospitals. You've bombed refugee camps, as Piers pointed out. You've bombed schools. As I've pointed out, and you've dodged, you bombed a Lebanese Christian town and killed 23 people from one family, including 2 babies. You
Back to
bombed,
school tomorrow.
UN
Sucks.
peacekeeping soldiers from Ireland and Italy who are not
I don't wanna
Hamas
go to
or
sleep,
Hezbollah
mommy.
either. Israel is bombing people deliberately. We don't need your word for that. We've seen hundreds of TikToks, including my company, Zateo, that you happily mentioned earlier, put out an entire documentary interviewing Israeli soldiers and showing the TikToks of them bragging about their violence inside of Gaza and now Lebanon. You talk about low-hanging fruit. Let's just be clear here on the facts, since people are not going to get the facts because, as you've read my book, you know there's a tactic called gish galloping, which is what you just did, which is to talk over all the facts without engaging with them. Here are the facts that people could go look up for themselves. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, the UN Human Rights Office, UNICEF, UNHCR, Save the Children, World Food Programme, WHO, Doctors Without Borders, I can keep going, Refugees International, International Rescue, they all, Care International, Christian Aid, Physicians for Human Rights, they all say the Israeli military is to blame for the casualties, for the killing of innocent people, for not giving warnings, for bombing civilian targets, and for starving the people of northern Gaza. Right now, Save the Children say that northern Gaza looks like the depths of hell. The World Food Programme says no food has been allowed in by your government and your military since the start of October. And by the way, one last point. You mentioned, oh, maybe 10 soldiers did this, 10 soldiers did that. Actually, according to the UN, this stuff is systematic. And I would ask you, you asked me who my investors are, I'll ask you. You were in the Israeli military. You proudly said you were a combatant. Someone asked you, were you involved in the things the Israeli military is being accused of by the International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor, by human rights groups, intentional killing of civilians, starving of civilians, the use of rape and sexual violence against detainees, using Palestinian children as human shields, as the New York Times reported this week? Did you do any of that when you were in your service, Jonathan Conricks?
None of that is correct. None of that is correct, and I will gladly address.
All correct.
Each
The
and
issue
every
is,
one
did
of
you
them.
do it?
Of course, you know very well that we don't have time to go into a serious discussion of each and every of those flat allegations that you're rattling off, as if you say them fast, it makes it true, and as if you wave a few
I'll say them
names of
slowly.
questionable
Rape.
organizations,
You rape
it makes it
detainees.
true.
Very slow.
No,
Well documented.
you don't. No. Mehdi, I didn't interrupt. Let's keep it that way. I really refrain from interrupting. Let's keep it that way. It makes for better discussion. Even though I think you said many things that are horrible, and you rattled off lots of names of organizations that, frankly, most people around the world, many people around the world, have lost their faith in, think are uncredible.
I know,
and
right?
mentioned
Dude,
organizations
there's some
that have been
crazy
shown
Ukraine
that
footage,
they
dude.
are full
You
of
see what I said on-
BDS supporters and
on
Israel
fucking
haters
Steam?
that have 2 jobs in BDS organizations and in these so-called humanitarian organizations. But you know what? Let's not go the easy.
Bro, I literally had
Let's
the.
say I take
Oh,
you
okay,
up
no.
on each and every one
I'm
of
in
those
Belgium. I'm
points, and I
good.
will say very
Like, what the
Whenever
fuck,
the
dude?
IDF finds out wrongdoing,
I've been watching
it
too many
takes
vids.
measures against the people who have done wrong. And it's a very challenging thing to do when a country is fighting for its very existence on at least 7 fronts, when its soldiers are being forced to fight for more than a year in order to defend their homes and their families, and then to simultaneously have these soldiers called in for disciplinary procedures and to be investigated while we are fighting. That isn't an easy thing to do, but yet the IDF does it. Not because the likes of you or others matter, but because this is who we are as a people who want to be able to look ourselves in the mirror and continue fighting
The likes
the
of
day
you.
after this
I
ends.
like that.
And
Alright.
we will end
Jonathan,
this
let
war.
me-
This
let me
war
ask you-
will eventually end.
Jonathan, let me ask you a question. Yeah, 'cause
Yes,
I want to try
please.
and just move to a different sort of theme with this. how does all this end? I mean, what is Israel's plan for the end game here? Because to many people, it looks like you're just going to war with everyone now in the region. It could escalate massively. And if you replicate what you've done in Gaza with what you now do in, say, the Lebanon, where does that leave
PTSD from a bunch of
everybody? I mean,
videos.
most of Gaza has been leveled.
No, I realized,
Tens of thousands
like,
of
all those
innocent
videos make
people
you
killed in the
realize
process of
what a
going after
fucking-
Hamas. If this is
That's
replicated in
those things
anything
are
like this
weapons.
scale
You know what I
in
mean?
the
It doesn't matter if they're
Lebanon,
commercial.
vast
You can just
areas
put a bomb
just
underneath them.
destroyed.
It's like
what happens
crazy, dude.
afterwards? And why would you assume that this tactic
That shit's
of
scary,
going so
bro.
aggressively after Hamas and Hezbollah in civilian areas is not just going to fuel the ideology that led to them rising up in the way that they did in the first place?
Yeah. Well, you know, going after an enemy aggressively, that's what war is. When you're attacked in your home, when your women are slaughtered, when babies are killed, when women are raped, and when your civilians are burnt alive and people are taken hostage, that's called a declaration of war. And you fight that. You don't fight it by being nice, and you don't fight it by being gentle. You do fight it according to the laws of armed conflict, and you try to adhere to those criteria. By and large, I think that Israel is succeeding. Sure, there have been mistakes, and sure, there are things that weren't 100% right, but I think that by and large, and that's, by the way, many British and American officers have attested to that as well. Those have been able to see the battlefield. But where does this go from here? Sadly, and I live here, and my kids will serve in the military, and I will probably do more reserves. I think that we're in for a long battle. I think that we're in for more fighting.
So-
I look around and I listen. I try to listen, and I speak Arabic, and I try to listen to the sounds and people that are willing to say and acknowledge that the Jews have a right to live and exist here. I try to hear those voices amongst Palestinians, Arabs, Syrians, Lebanese, and others in the region. And sadly, I don't hear them enough. And I regret to say this, but I think that what is in store sadly for Israel, and I would want for that to be totally different. I would want for us to focus on economy and research and culture, and to do many beautiful things that we do in Israel, and we do them very well, much to the displeasure of our enemies, but nevertheless we do them. And I would want for us to focus on that. But sadly, we're being forced to defend ourselves, and we weren't doing anything that is similar to what's going on now on the 6th of October.
Okay.
And just to end, I will say that, just one sentence, Piers. The next step is indeed Iran. And I think that we will have a conversation in a few months from now, maybe 4 or 5 months, where you can ask this question again after Israel will directly engage the Islamic Republic of Iran and start to shift the tide in the region.
That's gonna
We
go
won't
nuts,
have
bro.
Iran funding and amassing these terrorist organizations against us. That will be the beginning of a much quieter and more peaceful Middle East.
Okay, Mehdi, your response.
Yeah, I've got a lot to respond because a lot was said.
Yeah.
Let me just deal with the first point, this nonsense about October the 6th. It was all peaceful. Gazans were being killed on October 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd. West Bankers were being killed on October 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd. It's a complete lie that there was some kind of peace or quiet in the neighborhood. Maybe in Israel there was, but people were still bearing the brunt of occupation violence in both the West Bank and Gaza. It's a total and utter lie to suggest otherwise. It's also interesting that Jonathan responded to your question, Piers, by talking about how, and I think I'm quoting him correctly, that when you come into our homes and you kill our civilians and you rape our women and you set us on fire, that is a declaration of war. Which is ironic because he's just described everything that Israel has done in Gaza and the West Bank, both in recent weeks and months and over the years of occupation. So how come it's not a declaration of war for Palestinians when Israel does it to the Palestinians? It's only one-way traffic. Only one side has a right to defend itself, right? Not the other side. Number two, I would just say, he talked again about kind of, oh, there were too many names and I speak too fast. Let me just be clear. I can speak very, very slowly. One issue, rape. He lies and tells your viewers that Israeli soldiers are held to account. That's not true. Anyone can go on Google right now and look at the number of Israeli soldiers, the percentage who are actually indicted or charged with any crimes. It's 98, 99% of Israeli soldiers are never charged with any crimes. And that's from B'Tselem, that's from Israeli human rights groups. I'm sure Jonathan will call them anti-Semites as well. And when we look at one single instance of rape in detention, which was well documented by the Israeli media and by human rights groups and actual Palestinian eyewitnesses, what happened? The Israeli military police, Piers, went to the base to try and arrest the soldiers. The soldiers ganged together, attacked the military police, And then the parliament had a debate about whether rape should be legal or not, whether it's legal to rape Palestinian detainees. And now we're learning this week, Piers, that the military police officers who were assaulted by the soldiers who were the buddies of the rapists, are too scared to give testimony against their soldiers because they're worried about repercussions.
Mehdi, I don't disagree with you.
I don't know. Hold on, Piers.
No, I want to ask you one question.
That is very important that we talk about accountability.
I know. I've got one
I will
supplementary.
answer your question, but I'm going to finish my.
But on
on
the issue of
Piers,
rape,
I'll come.
Okay, on that one issue of rape, though, what I haven't heard you mention at all is the hideous sexual abuse, including rape, of so many innocent women.
Because we all condemn that.
On October the 7th. Well, no, but I'm asking you now, you haven't mentioned it, and Jonathan's raised that several times. You only seem fixated.
Why would I? Because
you're fixated with Israeli soldiers who may have committed rape. What about the rape against Israelis?
Piers, if you want to do a debate like that, invite Jonathan Conricus and invite a Hamas spokesperson. I'm sorry, I'm not a spokesman for Hamas. I've condemned Hamas. Unlike Jonathan, I condemn people who engage in human rights abuses. I did it. Hold on. Well, I've done it. Well, maybe you should pay attention, Jonathan. Instead of reading my book, check everything I've said on the conflict. I was condemning Hamas decades ago, and I've been attacked by certain people for condemning Hamas. Can I finish a point? You gave a long speech.
Yeah, you can.
So far, you and Piers have both interrupted me.
You can.
I'm going to answer this point.
He's always this guy's always whining, bro.
I did an entire show. Keep mentioning Zateo. I'm loving the plugs, Piers. Appreciate you. On Zateo, people can go and watch an entire show I did with Bassem Youssef, another one of your guests, where I talked about on that show about how the UN report talked about gender and sexual violence on October the 7th, how that needs to be prosecuted, how it needs to be investigated. And you know what the UN said? They said, we haven't been able to confirm instances of rape, but we want to, but the Israelis are blocking us from interviewing witnesses and coming into Israel. So maybe Jonathan should get his government to allow UN investigators to finish the job, because I believe all rapists should be held to account. Jonathan doesn't. He hasn't said a word. I've brought it up several times. He said, oh, it's a few men here and there. No. They're not being prosecuted.
Get some guns, boy.
Defended them.
I think I can finally make some. I played a rocket launcher like ages ago. I can't make explosives.
I have no civilization, no
I mean, I
country,
can.
no loyalty except to Qatar and Iran. I'm a British American of Indian descent. I have nothing to do with Iran or Qatar. I would say this, that Jonathan needs to deal with those human rights abuses. And finally, the last point I'll make, you keep going on about, oh, these groups are not taken seriously.
Actually,
Jonathan Conricus, Piers, wants you and your viewers to disbelieve Amnesty, Human Rights Watch, UNICEF, UNHCR, Refugees International, International Rescue, Christian Aid. Disbelieve all those groups. Disbelieve the World Food Programme run by Cindy McCain, the late widow of John McCain. Disbelieve all of them and believe the Israeli military, which he was a spokesman for, which was caught lying about beheaded babies, about calendars on the bottom of hospitals, about Lebanese documentaries, the number of the Israeli military lies that they've had to own up to. It's a joke. No one trusts anything Jonathan's saying.
All right, Jonathan, final word to you.
Yeah, actually many people do trust what I and my peers say, and many people I think listen to the kind of thing, the kind of goods that you peddle, Mehdi. And the goods that you peddle are Israel hatred. Sometimes it's more sophisticated.
AK bought this too, by the way. I'm not sure if you know. He's been playing it for like a couple hours now.
Dismantle. And it's very clear where you stand. I asked you before, and you conveniently didn't answer. What is it that you stand for? What do you represent? What
human
are
rights,
the values that
dignity,
you stand
equality,
for? Right.
Not rape and war
If it's
crimes
human
like
rights and dignity and equality, then I suggest that you stand equally and speak about how they're violated by the oppressive Iranian regime against the Iranian people. Speak about what the Syrian dictator...
I also installed Cult of the Lamb again.
Speak about how
Shit has co-op now as well.
How Hamas brutalizes 2 million Gazans.
I'm not sure if you got that
and
one.
how Hezbollah deals with dissenters in Lebanon.
You won't
the
criticize
problem
Israel.
with what you're saying,
the
problem
who
with
won't
what you're
criticize their
doing,
side is you.
Mehdi, the problem with what you're doing, Mehdi, is that it's very easy to listen to you less, even though you speak eloquently and you have good sources. It's easy to listen to you less and believe to you less because it's very clear what you're motivated by. You are not something that is motivated by a true care for human beings. You care about human beings if the ones who cause them injustice or something else are Israelis. If it's Palestinians killed by Palestinians, then that's a non-story.
If I had my way, Israelis wouldn't be dying right now.
You don't
Israelis
care.
are dying right now because of your government.
If it's suffering anywhere else, and if it cannot be pinned on Israel, even by your warped logic,
I don't
then
want
you
anyone
don't
to
care
die.
about it.
You
You
do.
only care about it if it's related to
That's a
Israel
lie.
and if it can serve
That's a lie.
anti-Israeli propaganda. And that undermines your credibility. You speak about my credibility.
criticized
I'm
Saudi
very
Arabia.
easy and open, and it's
You're
very
just lying,
clear.
Jonathan.
I
You've got
stand
nothing
for my
left.
country, and I'm happy to defend it. But
Can you
what
criticize
stand
Israel?
for is just attacking Israel. Of course, I can criticize, and I even do it on my Twitter.
Just.
I've said things about
No, you haven't done
my
it- you
prime
haven't done
minister,
it
and
one
I've
time
said
today. You
things
couldn't
about
even
my
criticize mass
military.
rape.
Of course, I have.
You couldn't even criticize mass rape by your fellow soldiers.
Listen, there hasn't
even do
been
that.
mass rape. It's such a
Shameful,
It's such
Jonathan.
a nonsense talking
You should
point.
be ashamed
Mehdi.
of yourself.
It's such a nonsense talking point, so I won't even.
Oh, so the
credit
UN's
it
lying,
with
the New York
acknowledging
Times
it.
is lying,
It is
CNN is
the
lying.
UN isn't
Wow.
saying it.
Everyone's
the UN
lying,
isn't saying it. The
except
fact
you
that
and
you
these
mentioned
guys.
an organization
Well,
name.
CNN is
and
probably
you
lying.
should
Let's be
inquire
honest.
last week.
Like
Chaps,
it's
we
fucking
always
say, well,
CNN.
it
I'm going to
hasn't.
call a
No, it
timeout
hasn't.
because we've,
Everyone can Google it, Jonathan,
chaps,
and see
we-
how much you
we've
lie.
descended into talking over each other. Look, it's been, broadly speaking, it's been
That
a
is
very
kind
good
of what they
debate
do, isn't it?
between two people who care very passionately and have obviously very different views about this. I've learned a lot listening to both of you. I'm glad you came together to debate it. I know you haven't done that before. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Hey, guns. Combat shotgun, that sounds nice.
You always pivot back to, yeah, but the real problem is Israel.
You're famous for interview style that begins with condemn this group, that group,
Right.
that group. You let me finish before you keep
Yeah.
suggesting I'm supporting October 7th, which I have not.
Sounds like you're justifying it to me.
You know what? Can I finish a sentence?
Booby traps are not allowed if they are genuinely indiscriminate.
You don't think
potentially.
going off in a grocery store is indiscriminate?
No, actually,
I'm not playing this game, Piers, because I'm not here to talk about the rules of war.
You say, Mehdi,
Sure,
all
why not?
roads lead to the occupation.
Yes.
Okay? Israel would say all roads lead to Iran.
Who cares what Israel says? They've lied for the last year. They've
Who
lied
cares
for
what
30
they say? I'm curious what you think Israel could do that would pass your tests.
Probably not much. I'm as close
Nothing.
I'm as close to a pacifist as you can get.
Just saying, I want it all. I want peace and joy. You sound like Kamala Harris. Well, two seismic issues are dominating the global news agenda. What happens next in each of them will have a profound impact on the state of the world. First, of course, is the forthcoming US presidential election. The second is the crisis now engulfing the Middle East. My next guest has strident views on both these big stories. He's not shy about airing them. Joining me in the studio is editor and CEO of Zeteo News, Mehdi Hassan. Mehdi, how are you?
Good to see you,
We have
Piers.
never met in person.
No.
Until now.
No, Twitter makes you think we have.
It was great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Great
Good
to
be
meet
in
you.
London.
Always enjoy our debates, which they are. Let's start with what's happening in Lebanon, because we may find some areas of agreement here, I suspect. But first of all, Hezbollah. Do you see a distinction between Hezbollah and, say, Hamas?
In what sense?
In what they are, what they represent, how they have acted?
I mean, they're very different groups. They operate in different places, in different contexts. I guess what they have in common is that they both came out of Israel's occupation of their land, right? Hamas comes out of the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, and many people are not aware of the fact that Israel occupied Lebanon, southern Lebanon, for 18 years, from 1982 to 2000 when they withdrew, although the Lebanese argue that there's still an occupation of a piece of Lebanese land called the Sheba Farms. So in that sense, they're similar. They're obviously different in some of their tactics. They're different religions. Well, they're different sects, I apologize, not different. They're both Muslim, but one is Shia, one is Sunni. They're both backed by Iran. I mean, look, there's similarities, differences. I think what's really interesting this time round is we've seen for a year Israel killing thousands of civilians in Gaza and saying, well, Hamas is to blame because of human shields, because of tunnels. That argument just does not work in Lebanon. They've killed 550 people, Piers, on Monday. An insane amount of people in a single day, one of the highest single-day death tolls in modern warfare. Almost all of them civilians, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry, which is not Hezbollah, by the way. You know, they always say Hamas-controlled health ministry in Gaza. So I think what we've seen is so phenomenally bad on Israel's end and so little defense. You know, October 7th was used, as you and I have discussed before, as the excuse for killing tens of thousands of Palestinians.
Well, I would categorize it differently. I don't think they use it as an excuse to go and kill tens of thousands of Palestinians. They responded to one of the most egregious terror attacks of modern times.
But when does the response end? We're nearly a year in.
Well,
they're still
that's the
killing
question.
them.
That is the question.
Well, that's when it becomes an excuse. When you carry on
Well, I
killing
don't-
and killing.
is it an excuse, or is it that they are wedded to the elimination of Hamas because Hamas has persistently said, we want to keep doing the same thing over and over again? And there's a correlation with Hezbollah, whose charter
Oh, fuck.
is very explicit. They stand for the eradication of Israel. I mean, that's what they're about.
That doesn't justify killing 500 people in a single day.
I didn't say it did, but
That's what bothers me. That's what happened this week. That's
I
the big story.
understand.
Hezbollah's charter is irrelevant to what we're talking about. That's not why they killed 500 people on Monday, Piers. I mean, Hezbollah's charter's been around for
I
years.
don't think it's irrelevant that you have a terror group on your doorstep who are wedded to your extinction.
The language
Why
you-
is that irrelevant?
I think the language you use is loaded, Piers. You say on your doorstep. Do you know they did a poll of Americans a while back who thought that Palestinians were occupying Israel? When we talk about this stuff, we make it sound like Israel is the one being occupied, besieged. Israel's the one that's occupying the West Bank, Gaza, longest military occupation in the world, going back to 1967. Israel is the country that occupied southern Lebanon. I mean, everything, the world did not begin on October the 7th. 1978, Israel invades southern Lebanon. 1982, Israel invades southern Lebanon. Sabra and Shatila massacre. 2006, Second Lebanon War, murder 100 people.
But you always make it sound like they're just doing this for the sake of it. They're not.
What are they doing it for?
Well, they've been provoked by Hezbollah.
That's what Hezbollah didn't exist in 1978. Piers.
Okay, I'm talking about the specifics of going on now. The provocation since October the 7th. Hezbollah's first response
Yeah.
to October the 7th
Yeah.
was to unleash rockets on Israel
That's not true.
on October the 8th.
That's
It
not
is.
true. That's not true.
That is what happened.
Where did they fire the first rocket?
They fired rockets on the 8th.
Where?
Well, you tell me.
No, you just said they fired at Israel. Where?
Well, they fired in the direction of Israel.
Where did they hit? They fired
Well,
at the
if you
Sheba
know the
Farms.
answer, tell me.
I do. They fired at the Sheba Farms, which, as I said earlier, is an area of Syria. Well, the Lebanese claim it's Lebanon. Syria claims it's Lebanon. Israel says no and is
Right.
occupying the Sheba Farms. They fired at Israeli military installations in the Sheba Farms. Now, have they got fired in Israel?
So they
since?
were
Of
firing
course
at Israel.
have.
They were
Of course
firing.
have.
They were firing
Yes.
at an area that Israel says is theirs.
No, Israel doesn't say that. Israel says it's Syria's. Because remember, Israel is occupying Syria and the West Bank and Gaza and Lebanon, would argue parts of
how
Lebanon.
would you-
This is the problem, right? The core of the problem
I
is
know it's mess.
Israel's territorial expansionism.
It's a mess.
Attacks, not a mess. It's Israel occupying multiple Arab lands, which leads to quote unquote resistance or quote unquote terrorism, whichever word, I don't care what word you want to use right now, but that is the core, right? You had John Mearsheimer on the show this week, made the same point. Deal with the occupation, then you deal with the violence. And look, has Hezbollah fired into Israel at similar times? Yes, I don't agree with that. But the reality is 82% of the exchange of fire between Lebanon and Israel since October the 7th has been done by Israel.
Okay.
82%.
But here's
Is that not a provocation of
Let me
Hezbollah?
finish my point, which is
Go on.
that since October the 8th, 19,000 missiles, rockets have come from Hezbollah to Israel, right?
But way more from Israel into Lebanon.
Well, I'm sure.
82%.
Of course they've responded. What else are they supposed to do?
82%.
But
So
aren't
it's not,
they-
this is not two equal sides.
So they can't defend themselves.
But the vast majority of attacks is on Lebanon.
Okay,
not the
but
other
would
way
you?
That's such a fucking retarded point, bro. Oh well, we attacked these guys, but they responded with way more firepower than we had. So obviously that's not fair, is it? What? What the fuck is that point? That's so brain dead.
Condemn the firing of rockets by Hezbollah or not?
Of course, I condemn all attacks on
Okay.
civilian targets.
Well,
we
we'll
know
come
that,
to-
Piers. We've discussed this
I'm
many
gonna
times
come to
before.
Israel's
I don't
response.
come on shows to defend militant groups or
Okay.
foreign governments.
Okay,
I
so-
come on shows to say, let's end the violence.
Yeah.
Let's sort out what the solution is.
Yeah.
Let's look at the root cause of the violence. It is undeniable that the root cause of the violence is Israel, Israel's occupation, the genocide in Gaza. What did the leader of Hezbollah say? He said, we won't fire any rockets if you end the killing in Gaza. What did the president of Iran say? We won't retaliate for what you did to Ismail Haniyeh on Iranian soil if you end the killing in Gaza. What did the Houthis say? We'll stop blocking ships if you end the killing in Gaza. Where do all roads lead back to?
Why would you
End
believe?
the
Why would
killing
you
in
believe
Gaza.
any of those?
I don't believe any of them. I'm Ronald Reagan.
You're citing them
No,
as if
I-
there's sort of gospel
I'm Ronald-
statements from people who have unimpeachable.
I'll tell you why, if you let me finish. I'm Ronald Reagan.
A bunch of terrorists said we won't do X, Y, Z if you do this.
I'm Ronald Reagan. I say verify. Call their bluff. If they're lying, call their bluff. Stop the Gaza fighting and then see what happens.
Yeah, but Israel has called Hamas's bluff.
When?
There was a ceasefire in place
When?
before October the
That's
7th.
not true.
Well, it is true.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
It's fundamentally false. They were attacking Palestinians the week before October the 7th.
What?
In
That's
September,
not true.
the Guardian-
It is.
There
It's
there
not.
was
It is.
Google on that
It's
tablet.
not. It
What's
is.
your definition of a ceasefire?
Guys,
well,
Israel gets to attack people and not the other way around.
We're not
In
getting
September,
anywhere.
hold on. In September, you just made a charge that's not true. There's a tablet there. You can Google it. Guardian headline, right there. You can go see the news report.
I don't Google during interviews.
Well, afterwards, everyone can. There's a Guardian headline, September 2023, a month before October the 7th. The headline is Palestinians shot in the ankles by Israel in Gaza, attacked. There were airstrikes in Gaza. And by the way, Gaza is not isolated. Gaza and the West Bank under international law are one entity. There were there were several hundred Palestinians killed in the West Bank before October.
But my
7th.
point to you, Mehdi, is
So there was no ceasefire. You just
Okay.
can't say it's just not true,
they would say there was a ceasefire.
and it's not true.
Go, we're finally using the
We'd
oil.
say otherwise.
The facts say otherwise.
But what I've noticed with you is you're...
Bro, I turned the
you
train on the
always
first time
downplay
automatically.
anything
I was
which
standing
might
on the
be
tracks. I
deemed
didn't
by
realize
Israel to
it
be
ran me down
provocation.
immediately.
You always
Not at all.
very,
Did I
very-
downplay October 7th? I
Like,
don't think I have.
immediately.
On the show or anywhere else.
No, but
It's a horrible
I saw it
film.
leave on the
You do
minimap
in your
and
debating
dead.
style,
What the
and
fuck?
it's a classic debating style, but you always pivot back to.
It's like I was doing it here, right? You could click it automatic, and I was standing on the rail.
If we're going to talk about styles, because you're famous
dead.
for interview style, it begins
Son of a
with
bitch.
condemn this group, that group,
Right.
that group. On Monday, 500. Hold on. Let me finish my point. Then you come back in. 500 people were killed on Monday. 100 women. 50
Like, it doesn't
children.
give
I
a fuck
assume
at
you
all if you're
condemn
standing
that
on
and
it.
Don't support the killing of
when
civilians
you're
in
somewhere.
Lebanon, right? 500 people died. That's the equivalent of 30,000 Americans or 6,000 Brits in a day.
Sure.
And yet we started this interview with Hezbollah charter. So if you're going to talk about styles, you're focusing on the wrong thing.
Okay.
I'm going to focus on 500 people dead.
Okay, let me go back to the week before, where 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists were targeted specifically.
How do you know that?
What do you mean? How do I know that?
You just said 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists were
How
targeted.
many was it?
I don't know. I'm asking you. Made the claim. How
That
do you
is
know it's
what's been
3,000?
reported.
By
Do you
who?
dispute that?
Yeah, I dispute everything Israel
But
says.
you
They've
don't know
lied
the
for a
real
year.
number.
Piers.
You don't know the real number.
But I didn't give a number. You did.
Oh, what has been the number from the other side?
I didn't give a number. You said 3,000 terrorists. I'm wondering why.
That is
journalist
what's been reported.
No, it's not reported. It's what's said by Israel, or it's what's said by people speaking on behalf of Israel.
So
was a little girl who
Israel
died?
has.
Was a
Israel,
little?
hang on. Israel hasn't even said it did it.
They have in private. It's been reported widely.
you?
To go, no, to the American government.
Okay, but
It's
don't
been-
say this.
Oh, okay, it's been reported widely. Okay, that you believe. This guy's an anti-Semite, man. Like straight up. Like, it's insane.
It publicly. They have.
But
Obviously,
been
I
killed.
believe they did it, right? But then
I believe they did it
but
too.
you're saying they said
But
this in public.
you just gave a 3,000 number, and I'm
Yeah.
wondering. I just saw a little girl's funeral last week. Was she a Hezbollah terrorist in your view?
No.
So then why did you say 3,000 terrorists? There was a
didn't-
kid killed.
No, I was about to say that in the process of targeting very specifically in an extraordinarily whichever way
In
you
a
look at it.
terror attack.
Well, that's what I'm going to come to. So they target 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists with their pagers, walkie-talkies, and so on. In the process, a small, comparative to that number, a small number of civilians get killed, which is obviously deplorable. But my point to you is, if someone's been chucking rockets over for a year at you and your people, you've had to displace 60,000 people from the north of your country because of his relentless bombardment, and you eventually respond in such a precise, targeted fashion,
Okay.
right? And in the process, some civilians are killed, which is never acceptable, can never be condoned, never be
Yeah.
supported. But if it is right, as has been widely reported by all mainstream media,
Yeah.
that 3,000 terrorists has
People associated with Hezbollah. Not everybody in Hezbollah are terrorists.
Okay, but okay,
A driver, a nurse.
3,000 members of Hezbollah were
Maybe.
targeted, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that that is? Some people have claimed it's unlawful.
Yep.
You've said it's a terror attack. So you think it was illegal.
Yep.
But I would say that's not. I mean, I would say that if you look at that in totality, they are responding to rocket attacks all year, and they are being extremely precise. Unlike what they've been doing in Gaza, where I do not accept that Israel's been doing this precision targeting they keep talking about, and I've
Yeah.
held them to account for that. I do think in this particular occasion, they were extremely precise, and it was a brilliant piece of warfare, right? If you want to call it that. Notwithstanding, I don't like any war, nor do you. But my point is, surely that is justified. I mean, in some parts of this, you have to say
Okay.
Israel's entitled to defend itself.
So, actually, Lebanon is the one that needs to defend itself, as we say. 500 people killed on a day. Look,
Well, we'll
you
come-
are
we'll
right.
come to that.
You have held. I've watched your interviews with Israeli spokespersons. You have held them to account on their nonsense about casualty numbers. But let me just say three very brief things on that. Number one, you said just a moment ago when they eventually respond. You use that phrase eventually. That's just factually inaccurate. We already discussed.
No, you're talking about firing rockets,
82% of
yeah,
the
yeah.
attacks.
Yeah.
They have been bombing Lebanon for a year. Now you can say who started it, whatever. I'm not talking about. But they've been attacking Lebanon.
But this is a significant escalation.
Yes, but 5 days after October the 7th, or 6 days after, they killed a Reuters video journalist in southern Lebanon, a man called Issam Abdullah, killed, according to Reporters Without Borders, targeted by Israel. According to the UN, a war crime. Right? So
This is
they
doing
have
my
been
head
killing
in.
people in Lebanon who have nothing to do with Hezbollah for a year now. So let's not say eventually. Number two, I would say, yes, it's an act of terror. and that's just not my view. You know Leon Panetta, former Obama defense
yeah.
secretary, former head of the CIA. When the former head of the CIA comes out and says Israel is committing an act of terror, I think we should take that seriously. But it's not just him. A group of UN special rapporteurs on human rights and extrajudicial killings put out a statement.
But many other
saying,
people have said it was not an
of course, and that's the problem with international law. People can argue it all ways. You know that you and I are not lawyers, but we know that lawyers
But do
can
you
argue
not think that
multiple
action
things.
was justified?
No, of course not. I don't think you should booby trap devices. It's against international law to use booby traps. I think I'm actually petrified, separate to the politics of the Middle East peers, I'm actually petrified at the ability of governments to use technology and surveillance to track us and now kill us. I think there's a wider discussion to be had. I think the idea that Israel keeps opening the doors to all sorts of new precedents that other governments will run with and we will regret. I think, going into the supply chain of devices, phones, beepers, whatever, pagers, I think that's very, very worrying. I also think from a practical point of view, it's not targeted. If you blow up a guy with a pager, even if you think he's a terrorist or a terrorist leader, you don't know if he's driving, he's at an intersection, he's about to crash his car into children crossing the road. We saw them going off in grocery stores. It's taken out people's eyes, fingers. No, I don't think it's targeted. I think it's barbaric. I think it's illegal. And I also think, look, I say this all the time. Even if I was an Israeli, I would not support this. It doesn't make Israel safer. Do you think Israel's safer today?
Would you support then any military...
They just fired a rocket at Tel Aviv.
Let me ask you, would you then, by your criteria, is there any military response that Israel can give, first to what Hamas did on October the 7th, and second to what Hezbollah has been doing ever since? Is there any military response Israel can do which in your eyes would be justified?
Well, I don't accept the loaded question. You say response. Israel is the aggressor in all of these places. As I say, they are illegally...
the aggressor on October the 7th, was it?
Well, it was actually, because it was occupying Gaza and it was besieging Gaza for 20 years, and even in Israeli general...
You're sounding like you think it was justified what Hamas did.
No.
It's one or the other.
Why?
Wait,
How is it justified?
So it wasn't justified?
Of course not. I've said that many times.
So
Why are you
was
making me
Israel
repeat
not
myself?
entitled to respond?
No, but I'm questioning you use the word response. Response implies everything starts on October 7th.
No, I
don't
say
accept
that.
your timeline.
I've never said that.
Well, you keep saying response.
To that specific terror attack, in a way that if in England somebody suddenly launched an attack on our people and they killed 1,200 and wounded nearly 7,000, I would absolutely expect my government to respond with substantial force. Would you?
Yes, but Britain...
So you would?
Hold on. But is Britain occupying territory in that scenario? Because that's the key point here. It's Shlomo Brom...
You're making it's dangerous wording.
No, it's not dangerous, because I'm going to
make it sound like... I don't disagree with you.
I'm going to quote... If you let me finish, before you keep suggesting I'm supporting October 7th, which I have not...
Sounds like you're justifying it to me.
Well,
you're saying,
not
they're being
attention.
occupied. They're being occupied.
They are occupied, and they're not occupied.
I think they probably are, yeah.
Not probably, the ICJ says they're occupied. Shlomo Brom, who's one of the former top Israeli generals, one of their big strategists, said after October the 7th, what did you expect? If you keep people under military occupation,
is that what you think?
They will rise up.
Yeah,
of course. There's always going to be terrorism.
What do you expect?
Yeah, there's always going to be terrorism and violence as long as you oppress people.
On that scale, you expected that?
No, obviously, I don't expect the details, but do you expect Palestinians to fight back? Of course you do. Everyone who's sane, who looks at this conflict from American presidents downwards would say the root cause of the violence has to be ending the conflict.
I agree.
So then, talking about tit-for-tat responses
but I also think if you go back to the start in 1948, which I've had many scholars on from both sides of this, probably the most interesting piece I read about this was Jonathan Friedland of The Guardian, who's a Jewish journalist, who concluded, you can construct, if you're reasonably fair-minded about this, you can construct a solid argument for both sides to feel aggrieved from the very start of this conflict.
Fair enough. And that's a different argument. I'm talking about what you talk about now.
When people say it didn't start October the 7th...
Well, I'm not even going back to 1948. I'm talking about 20 years of Gaza under blockade.
I know.
Open-air prison camp, to quote David Cameron, that well-known pro-Palestinian lefty.
But also Hamas, in that process since 2005, have clearly run Gaza in a despicable manner.
Agreed.
You wouldn't disagree?
No.
So it's not all Israel's fault, is it?
Well, no, because you're mixing different things up. Is Hamas...
But you're always very keen to put it all on Israel.
No, because if we're talking about...
I try and be a little bit more like, hang on, when you commit a terror attack...
Yeah, you both sides occupation and illegal...
No, I don't.
Yeah, you are. You said, I try and be fair. You can't be fair to an occupier. By the way, when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, this is what frustrates me. And I know my friend Owen Jones sat here and said the same thing to you. When we talk about Russia, Ukraine, you don't do both sides. You blame Russia as the invader and occupier. You don't do that with Israel. That is the double standard on your part.
No,
I try and be consistent, Piers.
No.
I'm morally consistent. I say Russia... Hold on, let me finish the sentence. Russia illegally invaded and occupied Israel and illegally annexed Crimea. And Israel is doing the same thing in the West Bank, Gaza, the Golan Heights.
As you know, they are completely different.
Yeah, Israel's worse. It's been going on much longer. Well, people living under much worse conditions.
But
they've killed more kids.
But there is no similarity in these two situations.
Agreed. Israel's is worse.
It's not.
How many kids have been killed in Ukraine versus Gaza?
Well, in 1 year?
Ever.
In 1 year?
Ever. Take whatever point you want. More
Yeah,
kids
but-
have been killed in Gaza than in Ukraine.
Okay.
Every human rights group agrees with that.
What's happened in Ukraine? We can come to Ukraine. What happened in Ukraine is a Russian dictator invaded illegally.
We agree on Ukraine.
Yeah.
But we don't agree on Israel because you're not consistent.
I think Israel is much more
consistent.
complicated.
That's
It-
complicated, as my friend Ta-Nehisi Coates pointed out the other way, is just a good way of avoiding attributing moral responsibility. It's complicated. No, it's not complicated, actually. Israel is the occupier under international law. Israel is the one killing the vast
also a
majority
liberal
of
democracy.
civilians. Right now, it's not a liberal democracy. It's run by
Russia
it's run by
claim-
neo-fascists
Which
right
Russia,
now.
well, I don't disagree with you. There are some right-wing headbangers on that cabinet. I also think that Netanyahu has to go. I also think the whole of Hamas have to go, right?
Under no scenario is it liberal democracy right now. Palestinians do not have the same rights.
But let me
as
come back to my
everyone
point about Hezbollah, because that's the most current part of this.
I'm about to have a
crisis.
functioning tank with
Oh,
guns. Let's go.
Plenty of time. With Hezbollah, my point to you would simply be that if someone does what Hezbollah did on October the 8th, has carried on doing it all year, they have a charter which says they want to eradicate Israel. You have to defend yourself. So the question then becomes, what type of defense or response or reaction or revenge, whatever you want to call it, I don't want you to get caught in the semantics of a word, but what kind of thing can Israel do, given that direct threat to them, to their existence? And the same sort of ideology applies in argument to Hamas. But with Hezbollah specifically, this state within a state in Lebanon, which is far better armed, far more powerful, far more resourced,
far more popular with the people, part of the government. It's much more part of Lebanese society.
and was created by 1,500 members of the Iranian Revolutionary
Supported,
Guard.
not created, but yes.
Well, they
I
train.
mean, they're also
They
indigenous
train.
to Lebanon.
They
That's
train.
right. They're not foreign force.
So my point is, what can Israel do that would actually tick your box of being justified?
My box is a very minimum box. My box is Hippocratic. Do no harm. Don't kill civilians. So
You don't respond?
No. You don't respond. This is the same argument with Gaza. You don't respond by killing 40,000 people.
What do you do?
What do you do
What
to
do you do if you're Israel?
target the Hezbollah people?
How?
I don't know. Jonathan Conricus came on your show last week.
They
former
couldn't have been-
IDF colonel. He said they're not in civilian areas, so we're able to target them. Okay, target them then. If you want to target them under the rules of war, you can target combatants. But
Well, hang
Piers,
on. No,
Piers,
hang
hold on.
hang
You just said earlier. Let me finish my point. Then you come back in.
No, Mehdi.
Go on. Then I'm going to finish my point.
You
since you're interrupting
literally
me.
just said you can target combat.
Yes.
But when they did that last week with the walkie-talkies and pages, you said, no, that's a terror attack. It's illegal.
Hold on. Because
Couldn't there been a more precise targeting
Hold
of
on,
combatants?
because they didn't just target combatants, as we've just discussed.
A
B,
very
they did it
small
in
number of
civilian
civilians
areas.
were caught
And
up.
C, they did it in violation of the amended Protocol 2 of the Convention on certain conventional
you
This might
weapons,
take a while.
which doesn't allow booby traps.
So there is no.
I already explained the booby traps.
Actually, no, that's not true. It's not true.
Okay.
Booby traps are not allowed if they are genuinely indiscriminate in the way that they.
You don't think
potentially-
going off in a grocery store is indiscriminate?
No, actually, I believe what I've.
You
seen-
gave the British example earlier, Piers.
No,
Are you
no.
okay with someone blowing you up in Sainsbury's, the guy next to you, blowing you up in the aisle of Sainsbury's?
I believe that what has been reported, right, widely reported, is that 3,000 terrorist militants, Hezbollah members, whatever you want to call them, were very precisely targeted.
Are you saying people
by
did-
your criteria?
Did they go off in grocery
by your
stores and
criteria,
hospitals?
If it's legal,
Piers,
in your
did they go
right-
off in
Hang
grocery
on.
Do this
stores
the
and
other way
hospitals?
around.
No, you brought up the UK earlier. We're in London right now. If I go from here to the local Sainsbury's to pick up some chocolate on the way out of the studio, and a terrorist is targeted next to me and they're blowing up in Sainsbury's and I lose my eyes, you're saying that's okay?
No, but if you have
Sounds like
people,
you're saying it's okay.
If those people in that grocery store are literally responsible for firing rocket after rocket at
You're
a
okay
neighbouring
with them being
country.
blown up with me? I'm just collateral damage.
I actually looked at what they did and I thought it was a very precisely targeted.
What about
thing
the 500?
of the-
What about the 500 civilians killed on Monday, which
But
you just don't want to talk about?
No, I'm
today?
going to come to that.
You keep saying that. The time's nearly up. 500
Time
people.
is not nearly up.
Well,
We'll be talking for literally 15 minutes.
Stop
500 racing the clock down.
I have another
Mehdi.
show to do, Piers.
Let me- hang on.
500 people died on Monday.
I've come in early for you.
500
I was looking for a thank you, Piers.
Thank you, Piers. 500 people were killed on Monday.
I'm going
You're
to
not
come to
talking
that.
about that.
I
and
am
I would
going to
say
talk about
it sounds like you're justifying that.
I am going to talk
I
about
don't
Glorious.
justify October 7th,
First of
but
all,
you are
though,
justifying-
before we get to that, I
Yes,
just
3
want to
weapons.
get inside your head about what you think is legitimate, because you said a very interesting thing. One, what they did was a terror attack.
I don't even know what the
even though
flamethrower
they would
uses.
say they targeted specifically combatants, and that is lawful.
But that's not true, though. We know that's not true. I
Well,
don't know
it
why
is
keep
true.
repeating that.
It is.
It's
true.
not true.
It is true. You can never.
Kids, doctors, nurses.
No, you can never target combatants and not involve civilians ever.
That's funny because Israel were bragging, well, people on behalf of Israel.
Tell me
they didn't
one.
publicly admit it.
Tell me one
Didn't
war.
they kill,
Tell me one war
Didn't they
that has
kill
happened.
Ismail Haniyeh
Tell me
without
one-
collateral damage?
tell me one-
Hold on, didn't they kill Ismail Haniyeh in
Mehdi,
Tehran without
tell me
collateral
one
damage?
war where
I just
that's
told you.
happened.
You just interrupted me twice. Ismail Haniyeh was killed in Tehran. There was no collateral damage.
But to be
now, I
clear-
don't agree with that killing,
All right.
but there was no collateral
But to be
damage.
clear, you think that the targeting of combatants is legitimate,
If you're in a war,
I don't know what ammo that
and
is.
they are fighting with you, and they are fighters, yeah, of course it's
but
legitimate.
you
Because I don't
also
have it
think
yet.
that when Israel targeted combatants from Hezbollah last week
Because I don't
in a
accept
very
the premise
precise
of your
way,
thing. I don't
it's
accept the premise.
terrorism.
Yeah, I don't.
How
well,
can it be both?
Hold on. Leon Panetta says it's terrorism, the former head of the CIA.
So?
Not just me. Well, you act like it's some crazy extreme view. If the head of the
say
CIA,
that.
the former head of the CIA is saying this is terrorism
drive through it?
because it's
No, I want you
not
to
done.
explain what is.
Let's
so
go.
give me
It doesn't
an
even do
example.
damage no more.
Of
Fuck
where-
you,
of
Forrest.
where-
People in Lebanon don't know what
You
devices
think,
to use anymore.
you think killing Hezbollah don't know
By the
what
way,
devices
I'm not playing this game, Piers, because I'm not here to talk about the rules of war. My position is, even if it's legitimate...
You just
don't-
talked about them.
No, because I'm saying even if it's legitimate, even if I accepted the 3,000 is legitimate, which I don't,
Yeah.
I still don't think they should do it.
But you
Because
said
hold on,
targeting.
Can I finish a sentence?
You said targeting militants.
Yes.
Run,
combatants
Forrest, run, destroy.
is lawful and justified.
Yes,
That's
but
funny.
even then I don't think we should do it. Okay. You know what? Can I finish a sentence?
I think there's an inconsistency there.
No, I'm very consistent. I'm saying even if it's legitimate, which in this case it's not legitimate, let's say I take the say it's legitimate, you still shouldn't do it because all it leads to is escalation. I don't want escalation in the Middle East. I don't want a regional war that America
Right.
dragged into. I'm saying that the way of the gun, the military solution to everything, is a failure, whether you think it's moral
So
or
how
immoral.
should Israel respond?
I've told you, with end the occupation. You don't want
Right.
to talk about the occupation, Piers. You don't want to talk about the 500 dead. I'm telling you, that's the root cause. Israel wants to do everything except what every smart person is telling them to do. Even members of their own security establishment are telling them to do. End the occupation, and then see what happens.
say-
Nobody's waking up in the morning saying we want to kill Israel for no reason.
You say, Mehdi, all roads lead to the occupation.
Yes.
Okay? Israel would say all roads lead to Iran.
Who cares what Israel says? They've lied for the last year. They've lied
cares
for
what they
30
say?
Yeah, do you care what Russia says?
No.
This is what I'm saying. You're inconsistent. The
Israel's-
occupier and
Israel's
the
a liberal
invader
democracy.
doesn't. I don't care
It's not,
what.
it's not a barbaric.
So if you're a liberal
dictatorship.
democracy, first of all, they're not a liberal democracy, and second of all,
They are.
no, they're not. They're an ethnocracy. But even if they were a liberal democracy, you don't get to invade other people's land. That's not an excuse, Piers. It sounds like you're justifying an illegal military occupation.
No, I'm not.
You just did. You said they're a liberal democracy. Sounds like you're
I didn't
justifying
justify.
occupation.
You're extrapolating two things together. Why?
I said it's an occupation. You said, but they're a liberal democracy. Sounds like a justification. for
I'm just
occupation.
coming back to one thing because I'm curious what you think Israel could do that would pass your test.
It's probably not much. I'm as close
Nothing.
to I'm as close to a pacifist as
Wow.
you can get.
It's
I
not
think you only
pacifism.
use
Pacifism
force
is not
to
allowing
defend yourself.
everyone else to attack you and to rape and murder and pillage you, to fire rockets all year.
Who's raping?
You don't think that's what Hamas did in
I
October?
thought we were talking about Hezbollah. You're jumping around.
I'm talking about both.
You were talking about Hezbollah a moment ago.
It's the same. To me, it's the same.
But that's
Israel's
the
come up-
problem. To you, it's the same. Everything's very simplistic.
Let me
The
explain
world is
why.
not
Let me
simplistic.
explain why. You have two.
Lebanon is way
you
more
have- to
complicated.
me, you have two groups of terrorists funded by Iran. They both are wedded to existential removal and disintegration of all things Israel, and they're prepared to use a lot of violence to achieve that.
But not
It
as
works.
much violence as Israel has used to occupy their land for 50 years in the case of Gaza and the West Bank.
So
For decades
so
in
your argument is whatever Hamas has done and whatever Hezbollah does is justified.
No. The only person justifying violence here is you, Piers, not me.
So
I've not justified any violence
violence
today.
is
You've
happening.
justified terrorist attacks via pages. You seem to have justified the occupation. You won't even say occupation.
I do think the specific targeting of Hezbollah in the way that they did it,
Do you think it makes Israel safer?
that's a different question.
Well, that's the question that matters to me.
I think Israel
If
feels...
there's no point doing all this,
If I was
and at the
living
end of the day, the war continues. I want to end the conflict, Piers.
So, well, of course, maybe this is...
Well, then escalations don't
No,
help.
no, this-
Israel is briefing the press, Piers.
Just saying, I want it, or I want peace and joy. You sound like Kamala Harris.
No, actually, Kamala Harris is funding Israel. She
I know.
supports you, so that's the problem.
Doesn't support me.
She supports your position that Israel has a right to do this stuff. It doesn't have a
I
right to do
didn't. I
this
didn't have a right to do all of it. I've never
So
said
you
that.
pick and choose which bits?
Yeah.
What do you think they have a right to do?
I think that they have been disproportionate in their response.
That's very
to Gaza.
vague. What do you think they're allowed to do in Gaza? You made me very specific. What do you think they should specifically do in Gaza?
I think in Gaza that they were the victims on October the 7th.
You've already said that.
I know.
What should they do in Gaza?
So I think they are perfectly entitled to go after Hamas. What they're not entitled to do, in my estimation, is to level the whole of Gaza to the ground in the way they've been doing. Nor can they move vast numbers of Palestinian civilians to specific areas.
those are war crimes.
And then bomb those areas as well.
And those are war
right? So on
crimes,
those,
yes?
on those
And
things
those
we
are war
agree.
crimes, yes?
Probably, yeah.
And what about in Lebanon?
In Lebanon,
They just killed 500 people.
there is, to me, a big difference.
50 children.
I'm about to ask you. I think there is a big difference between what they did in the targeting of the pages and what they did with the airstrikes, which were far more indiscriminate and killed far more civilians.
I mean,
and my question for Netanyahu, if he would dare to do an interview with me, which he now won't, but if he did, I would say, what are you trying to achieve here? Because it seems to me you're just leveling Gaza, killing tens of thousands of people in the process.
Trying to stay in office.
You're never going to finish off Hamas completely. You're certainly not doing anything but, in my view, fueling their ideology. And you have no plan for what happens in Gaza afterwards.
Agreed.
And you have a bunch of right-wing nut jobs in your
We finally
cabinet who actually do speak in quite a genocidal way. All of that I agree.
They are about Lebanon too,
Yeah,
by the way.
we-
You know that, right? They're speaking about Lebanon in a genocidal way too.
I think there are people there who just want total war with everything to do with Palestinians.
But
and
don't you think someone
the
like you with
Hezbollah.
your huge platform should be calling that out consistently?
I do, but I also
No, you just
No.
get me holding. Iran backs Hamas, Hezbollah, terrorism. That just sounds like an Israeli narrative,
you take one side completely.
just like you do in Ukraine.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So I'm consistent. I take the side of the Ukrainian people under occupation and the Palestinian people under occupation. I'm consistent.
No, you're not.
I am.
They're totally different
Well,
situations.
you have to say that because you're not consistent.
And you have to say what you say.
No, but I literally described it. 2 people's under foreign occupation, 2 people's having their hospitals bombed, 2 people's having their kids killed, 2 people facing governments to say genocidal stuff. Yeah, I'm consistent.
One is a democracy and an ally of the
Says
West,
you.
and one is
Oh,
not.
ally of the West. What little slip in there? What's that got to do with anything? So allies of the West get to be genocidal.
No,
Why did you say ally of the West? Why
I
is
don't
that relevant?
believe. I don't believe what they're doing in.
So if
Gaza.
Russia was an ally of the
No,
West, they could
hang
kill
on.
people in Ukraine.
I don't believe what
Wow.
they're doing in Gaza is genocide. You do, I don't.
Well,
genocide is the complete.
Put genocide to one side, whether
destruction of
we
people.
agree or not on genocide, and it is genocidal.
It's not
You just
genocide.
said there you're ally of the West. Why is that relevant?
I think it's important you support.
So if you're an
allies.
ally of the West, you get to kill kids.
No, you get
So
some.
why is it relevant?
You support.
You're making my point for me,
You
Piers. I'm
support-
consistent.
you support
I don't
your-
care whether you're an
No,
ally
many-
of the West
many-
or an enemy of the West.
Fine.
I care about what you do.
Yes.
And Russia and Israel both committing war crimes,
Yes.
both saying genocide.
Yes, but Mehdi, here's my point. You are so blindly anti-Israel that you frame everything.
You can say the same thing about
everything-
Russia.
I'm very blindly against Russia.
Okay, then so again, so you're
you- are you
inconsistent. I'm exactly. I'm consistent. I'm blindly anti-occupying Russia that occupies Ukraine. and I'm
Jesus, how the
blindly
fuck am I supposed to-
anti-Israel that occupies Gaza? By the way, another area I'm consistent with. I do think both wars need to come to an end, and they're going to come to an end through something called a negotiation. I don't believe in prolonged conflict. I don't know. I'm not a negotiator.
What's
I
a
don't
negotiation in
I don't
Ukraine?
believe there's a military solution to either conflict.
Give me the solution.
I don't have one. Do you have a military solution? I don't think there is one.
We can't possibly give Putin what he's taking.
No, I agree.
So how do you do it?
I don't know. And I don't think the military continuing helps. I mean, how do you win militarily? I don't know how that
Would you
works.
said that in World War II
What do you mean?
when the Nazis were trying to take over the world?
No, there was a plausible plan to win, wasn't there? When the US came in?
Just to fight them.
And there were no nuclear weapons back then, Piers, as you know.
Okay, but you do think Putin would ever use them?
Do you not think you would?
No. Why would he? He's not an Islamic fundamentalist who wants to blow himself up.
Oh, that's a very racist thing to say.
It's
Piers.
not.
You're saying only Muslims want to use nuclear
No,
weapons?
I said
What?
Islamic-
Why would Putin not want
I
to use
didn't say Muslim, I said Islamic fundamentalist.
Why is it Islamic fundamentalists? What's
Because
that?
Islamic fundamentalists kill themselves
But
to
they've-
get what they want.
But they haven't used nukes. The only people who've used nukes in history are the United
You're
States
missing
of
my
America.
point deliberately, and you're playing,
No, because I just find
and you're
it
playing the
weird.
race card
You play-
stupidly.
You're playing weird asides, Piers. You're bringing in Western
I'm answering your
allies.
question about whether I thought Russia would use nukes. No, because
the
they
only
don't-
people who would are Islamic
They do
fundamentalists.
not behave.
Western centric.
He does not think like an Islamic fundamentalist, where they will kill themselves to get their goals.
You know the United States of America used a nuclear weapon, Piers, right? They're not Islamic fundamentalists.
You're missing my point. The point is, Islamic fundamentalists.
He's
will
not
kill
missing it.
themselves
He's looking
in
past
the
it
process of
deliberately.
destroying others. Russia does not
The
want to do
guy's-
that. Vladimir
guy's an
Putin doesn't
ideologue,
want to
bro.
kill
What the
himself.
fuck do you expect?
Right? So my point about the nuclear threats, which he does all the time, is he takes what should be a deterrent. Look, we shouldn't have nuclear weapons, right? Period. But we do. Russia has 6,000.
As does Israel.
Russia has 6. I'm sure they do. And I put that question to Netanyahu, and he fudged it. But I'm sure, of course, they do. Right? But the point is, I don't think that the mindset of someone like Vladimir Putin is to start a war where he gets instantly vaporized. Makes no sense to me. So I think he uses it as a threat, and a lot of people in the West go like this and go, oh my God, we can't do anything. We must let him continue what he's doing because he might nuke us. And I think he's been doing this now for years, and we've got to stand up to him because he's never going to use nuclear weapons, because he knows the moment he does, Russia and him are dead. And he doesn't think in the way that Al-Qaeda or ISIS or one of these groups do, where they don't mind dying in big numbers to blow things up.
It's a very fair argument. I respect that.
That's my
argument. That's a fair argument. I respect that argument. I'm saying I'm not willing to take that risk. I would like to see the Ukraine conflict come to an end.
So would
in
I.
Ukraine's favour.
Yeah, but how?
I don't know. I'm not pretending to
But
know
look,
the solution.
But with respect, I do respect it. With respect, simply saying, I just want peace and harmony.
You
and
don't have a
everyone
solution to
like each
Ukraine
other."
either.
I do.
What is it?
Support them.
That's not a solution.
No, it is.
No, it is. What's
Oh,
the
it is.
end goal?
You give them the tools that they're asking
Yeah.
for to repel Russia long enough that Russia goes, all right, enough.
And there's nobody agrees that Russia's going to give up to Crimea. No one's ever going to.
I didn't say Crimea.
That's part of Ukraine. You said
Yeah.
don't give up any Ukrainian territory.
Crimea to me has already been sorted. I'm talking about the I don't think they can do about
Okay,
it.
good. Well, we agree
right?
on that.
But I do think that the area of the Donbass
Yes. They've been annexed as well,
they should not,
unfortunately.
they should not
completely
be
illegally.
allowed to take that as well. If they do, they'll never stop.
I agree with you. I don't think they should be allowed to take it, but I don't see a military solution. But I'm not a military expert. But the people I read say there's no way the Russians.
What
give
do
up.
you think is the solution in the Middle East with Israel? I get the argument, give up occupation. Okay.
Yes.
All right. On that we agree. Okay?
Okay.
But Israel will only do that, and this has the vast support of their people. They'll only do this if they feel that they can get security out of the situation. They'll only allow a two-state solution. I mean, do you believe in a two-state solution?
I don't believe in any solutions. I don't talk about one state, two states, three states, because all of it is nonsense. All of it is pie in the sky. None of it's happening. My position is I want equality for Palestinians
Yep.
and Israelis, Jews, Muslims, Christians living in that part of the world.
Exactly the same human rights for all.
Exactly.
On that, I agree with you.
I don't care about the structures. I don't care what the name of the place is, what the government looks like. I want equality between the river and the sea,
Yep.
to use a phrase, for everyone living in that patch of land. No one's leaving. I don't believe any of those people are going anywhere. They're all staying. They all have to live side by side as equals. I'm a Democrat, small d Democrat. I believe it should be a democracy. But fundamentally, right now, I'm only concerned about one thing: stop the killing, stop the genocide.
Do you agree that Hamas could play no part in any government going forward
Which government?
on the Palestinian side?
Like in a final settlement?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think there would ever be a final settlement government. I don't think anyone would agree to that. I agree. Yes.
So
if there was a kind of one-state solution, which some people talk about, which is everyone binationally living side by side, of course not. If there's two states and the Palestinians were to choose a coalition government involving Hamas, well, that's up to the Palestinians, is it not?
let's go to something else. I think we're in fun agreement. The Al Jazeera raid, because you work for Al Jazeera. I thought that was disgraceful. And I think actually, when you take it in the context of what Israel's been doing in really prohibiting almost any foreign correspondence going into Gaza as well, you're seeing a genuine suppression of media and press freedom. And to actually shut down Al Jazeera studio in Ramallah, I thought was an absolutely outrageous attack on free speech. I mean, I presume you agree.
100%.
And
It's outrageous that there's no foreign journalists allowed into Gaza a year in.
Yeah,
What do
it
they
is.
have to hide?
Well,
Use
exactly.
the
That's my
famous
point.
phrase.
That is my point. I totally agree with you.
But that's why I say when you say liberal democracy, I laugh. That's not how a liberal democracy behaves.
Well, no liberal democracy is perfect. We're not here, as you and I would agree about.
I agree.
For example,
But there's a difference between a liberal democracy not meeting standards and behaving in this way, which is complete censorship. You see what's happening in Israel, where kids are being
Can't
pulled
shoot
out
it
of schools
separately,
for,
it's sad.
criticizing what's happening in Gaza.
I want to try it out.
It's not liberal democracy in any way. Separately,
Sucks I lost my
going back
tank
years, the way
and all
Israel's
those
constructed,
shells. That's the worst
Palestinians
part.
do not have the same rights as Israel.
who would be a better president for resolving what's happening in the Middle East, Trump or
Those shells are expensive.
That's the hardest question you
Yes.
asked me today, harder than anything else.
I know.
Um,
Because I've seen what you said about it.
I think they're both hopeless. I think John Mearsheimer made a good point about Tweedledee and Tweedledum on the Middle East.
But one of them's going to have to win.
Yeah, who do I think is less bad? They're both horrible on
That's a
this
different
story.
question.
Well, they're both horrible on it.
I
So what's the
phrased it
question?
very
Go on,
specifically,
say it
so you'd
again.
find it hard to
I
answer.
know, so go on, can you say it
Well, the
again?
question is, which one is more likely to be able to help resolve the Middle East
Oh,
crisis?
okay, so...
Trump or Harris?
Oh, Harris, simply because she's a sane, reasonable person. But I don't believe she will resolve it. I'm going to add the caveat. I'm not saying there's going to be some two-state solution in a Harris term. But is she more likely? If you're asking me as a betting man, I'm a Muslim, I don't bet. But is she more likely? Yeah, Harris. Obviously, she's more likely to do anything productive because he's the most unproductive, ridiculous figure to ever come near higher office in the history of America.
He's had 2 assassination attempts on his life. The second one, who obviously is still alive, he wrote a note, assuming he might get killed in the process of killing Trump, in which he basically rattled off a series of Democrat talking points. I mean, literally word for word in some cases from what Harris has said and so on. I'm not blaming Kamala Harris for what happened. He's a lunatic. And,
He's a lunatic.
and
He
should
invited Kim Jong-un to Hawaii.
Right, and the Secret Service should have stopped him way before he ever got to where he got to.
And Trump
And
shouldn't be
that's-
playing so much golf as well.
Well, actually, he plays as much golf as Obama.
The Secret Service have asked him to reduce it because it is a
because
security
they can't
risk.
protect him.
Yeah.
Which is disgusting.
And I'm not
in
going
my
to defend
opinion.
the Secret Service.
But when you see somebody using specific talking points and you see the rhetoric being used, we've had the debate before about the left calling him Hitler and so on. But I do
Not
genuinely.
the left. J.D. Vance called him Hitler, his
I
running
know.
mate.
I accepted that point.
Good.
But no one should. In my estimation, likening Trump to someone who killed 12 million people in World War II is ridiculous and dangerous. And in the wrong, dangerous minds, lunatic minds, this is where you end up. On both sides, Trump's rhetoric is often terrible. Let's agree with that. But as someone on the left yourself, do you not think that there has to be a dialing down of the blind hatred rhetoric about Trump?
So I'm going to say the same thing I said to you last time, which is I wish we didn't have to raise the rhetoric. I agree with you to a point that if you say certain things about certain people, of course I do. I'm on the left. I think if you dehumanize people, I'm the one who says migrant attacks because of Trump's rhetoric. So I would be a hypocrite if I didn't say that rhetoric leads to things. Yes, of course it does.
The
I'm
heavy
not one
oil
of
is
these
going
free
down way
speech
faster
absolutists.
than I'm producing it.
Words
Look
have
at
those
this,
feelings,
dude.
sticks and no, words lead to actions. Words
I'm
lead
making
to
4
violence.
lubricants out of heavy
So
oil.
yes, in any scenario where we can
Look
dial
how many
back
fucking-
and
what the
something
fuck?
completely
And it's
agree.
not- it's still not
I
enough.
get very uncomfortable, for example, that now at Democratic rallies people are shouting "lock him up," which I don't agree with.
13.
Well, it's total hypocrisy.
It's
To 4.
hypocrisy.
Nope,
Put
not
it-
enough.
He's on trial. If he's going to be locked up, let a court and a jury do it. I don't think the crowd should be shouting that. It's not a helpful contribution.
Do you feel comfortable?
That makes me wince.
That he's a
But
convicted criminal because of a one-night alleged one-night stand with a porn star?
That's not why.
Did you feel comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with the trial that Alvin Bragg done. I'm comfortable with the grand jury that indicted him. I'm comfortable with the jury of his peers that convicted
Really?
him. But
You can't be
And
comfortable.
I'm actually, what I'm uncomfortable with is that a bunch of his own judges now are protecting him from justice elsewhere. That makes America look like a quote-unquote banana republic. You know, you and I live in the UK. You don't get to go pick your own judge.
I
who
actually
you
thought.
appointed.
I actually thought the way that
The Florida thing's
I thought,
ridiculous.
no, I thought the way the Democrats weaponized the justice system to go after Trump.
I wish they had. They
for the
didn't,
storm-
actually.
for-
They
well,
spent
for the-
years dragging
well, they
their
did.
feet.
They made
Merrick
him-
Garland was
well,
the
they,
most useless
hang on.
AG.
They made him a convicted criminal over a one-night stand
They
with
did
a
not
porn
make
star
anything. A jury-
18 years before.
A jury of his peers
Should
made him
never have been put to a
Okay,
jury.
let me answer your original question about violence, but since we sidetracked, a jury of his peers convicted. Back to this, on the rhetoric, I wish I didn't have to compare Donald Trump to Hitler. But when he quotes the lines from Mein Kampf, as a journalist,
Come on.
as a journalist, should I not point out?
You shouldn't compare him to Hitler because he's not Hitler.
Okay, so what should I do? So I'm a journalist. Donald Trump says immigrants are poisoning our blood. I go look in history who's the only person who said that, Hitler. Should I not tell my viewers on Piers Morgan Uncensored? Should I go, can't tell them that?
No, you
So
can
what should I
say,
say?
you can say he shouldn't use language like that.
Can I say he's
But you
quoting
can't
Adolf
say
Hitler?
you can't say he's the new Hitler.
I haven't called him the new Hitler.
Right.
I've never called him the new
So you
Hitler.
accept the people who
But
say
I'm
that.
allowed. But you say I'm allowed to say he's quoting Hitler.
You can, if he uses a direct sentence, which you can chart back to
It's
what came out of
almost
Hitler's mouth,
directly the same,
That's
yes.
absolutely fair enough. But the idea that there is any comparison between Trump,
No,
and
of
Hitler
course not. Hitler is Hitler. We know that.
Is appalling.
Hitler is Hitler.
Do you
But
agree? It's appalling.
no, but I want to
you?
qualify what you're saying. Hitler
agree it's appalling?
What is appalling?
To compare him to Hitler,
To compare him to Hitler, in what sense though?
they're calling him the new Hitler.
Yes, and no, don't call him the new Hitler.
Is that appalling?
Oh my God, I'm not playing the silly game.
Give me a word.
I don't want you put your words.
Give me
I'll
a
use my own words.
condemnatory word.
I think it's not accurate to say he's the new Hitler because Hitler killed
Not
12 million
accurate.
people. Yeah, it's not true.
Not offensive.
But if you let me finish the sentence, I speak to a lot of fascism scholars, people like Ruth Ben-Ghiat, Jason Stanley. A lot of people say that there is an analogy between what Trump is doing in America now and what happened in places like Germany in the 20s and 30s.
No, there
right
isn't.
I respect
an
your
example.
Yo, Joe,
opinion.
what's up?
I respect your opinion that you don't think it is.
Well, give me an example.
I'm not having that argument around. I'm trying to make a separate point, which is if fascism scholars are saying we look at history and we make comparisons, they are scholars of fascism and they're saying, hey, hold on, the rhetoric is very similar. The way they're operating is very similar. That is it. That first of all, free speech, they should be
You
allowed to
said
say
Trump-
that.
you
said
You're
Same.
supposed to be the free speech champion.
I am.
And then
Of
you
course
sit
I
there
am.
regulating everyone's speech.
I'm not
Say it's
regulating.
appalling.
I'm not regulating. No, I'm asking
you literally just told me.
I asked.
Call it appalling.
That's not regulating what you're saying.
you're
It's
telling me-
asking you, can you bring it in yourself to condemn people who say he's the new Hitler?
I don't know who those people are. J.D. Vance called him the new Hitler, and he's his running mate. So take it up with J.D. Vance.
Condemn him as well.
Call him on your show.
You condemn anyone on the left who uses it too, right? A
Uses
comparison.
what, though?
Who says he's the new Hitler? Specifically.
Those specific words, the new
Yes.
Hitler, yes.
Okay.
Is he speaking like Hitler? Yes, he is.
Okay.
And that should be condemned. Do you
You
condemn,
said-
hold on, do you condemn him speaking like Hitler?
Yes.
Does that not outrage?
Of course.
He's like your pal. Why don't you tell him to stop it?
Of course.
Have you ever told him to stop quoting Hitler?
Yes, probably. I can't remember the last interview I did was before or after, but if I do again, I will. Yes, of course.
Good. And hosting a Holocaust dinner at Mar-a-Lago.
But yes, Nick Fuentes, absolutely.
Have
I
you told him
condemned
to stop doing that?
I said it on Twitter to him. Don't let white supremacists anywhere near you. Why are you doing that?
Nah, that's not condemnation. That's a question.
I think
You
it's
should condemn
we
it.
condemn it. It's disgusting.
It's appalling.
It's appalling.
Good.
There
We're
you
in
are.
agreement.
You
I
trying to
love when we
regulate my
agree.
speech?
I love when we agree.
You said that Trump.
Agreement.
You said Trump called for the.
I really
ethnic
don't like
cleansing
Mehdi
of illegal
Hassan, bro.
immigrants.
You're
Yes,
such a
he did.
weasel.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
What did he say?
He said he wanted to deport illegal immigrants.
No, he didn't actually.
Yes, he did.
Piers, you're wrong.
That's what he
Again,
said.
anyone can play the tape after this interview. You're wrong. You should do better homework.
Ethnic
when you do.
cleansing is the forced expulsion
love your team.
usually involving killing of members of a specific religious or ethnic group.
Hold on.
That's what ethnic
I
cleansing
really
is.
like your team. I deal with them a lot when I come
Yep.
But you should talk to whoever did your research, because that's wrong. You know what he said? Go watch the clip. It's on tape. He said, we've got to get rid of them from Springfield.
Yeah.
Who are the people in Springfield? Haitians. They're not illegal immigrants.
So it's interesting, Springfield. because
Hold on, no, don't jump around. You just got something
If
wrong.
I'm going to mention I
You
didn't
said
get it
he's-
wrong.
No, you did. We could play the tape back. He said illegal immigrants. That's not true. He said Haitians should be. You got to get rid of them.
You said, Mehdi, let me just go
No,
back
no,
to
no, you
Hang
said-
on, let me clarify what you
Please
said.
clarify what you
said.
said.
His policy is calling for the ethnic
I didn't say
cleansing.
policy. It's a phrase on Twitter. If you're going to kind of
Trump-
police my tweets, then fine.
Well, you said that Trump has called for the ethnic cleansing
Yes,
of
the,
legal
the
immigrants.
violent, forcible removal of legal immigrants, I think, is a form of
But
ethnic cleansing.
that's not his position.
But
his position is that there should be mass deportation of illegal
Wrong. The
migrants.
clip is online. Everybody, I
You're
don't know what camera
conflating
to look
different
at.
things.
No, you are, because my tweet was over that clip. So anyone can go look, and you guys got it wrong. I looked at a clip of him saying, you got to get rid of them in Springfield.
Different
the people
story.
in Springfield.
Different thing.
But that's what I'm tweeting about, Piers. You don't get to
But that's not
misrepresent
what
my
he's
tweets.
talking about with the mass deportation.
Yes, he is. He was talking about Springfield.
No,
he said
wasn't.
Springfield.
No, he talked
Have you
specific-
watched the clip?
Yes, I've watched many clips
No,
of
no,
all of
but
it.
the clip that my tweet is on.
Well,
I
you're
mean, you're
specific.
wrong, Piers. I get it. You can back
Do
down
you
and
think
say
he
you got it
wants
wrong.
ethnic cleansing of Haitians in Springfield?
What he wants, I don't try and get inside a madman's
You
head.
call that ethnic cleansing?
I'm not. If he tries to violently remove,
think he wants to kill them?
Can I finish a sentence? If he wants to violently remove legal immigrants from their homes, yeah, I think that's a form of ethnic cleansing. Yes, based on their ethnicity or identity.
I'm not even
100%.
making
Do you
that
think
yet.
it's right in Springfield?
Do you think it's right to call for the deportation
get
of
a
legal
word in?
immigrants? No, you cut me off.
It's actually, it is technically my show.
And you misrepresented my tweet, which you haven't corrected yet. My
Okay.
tweet was in reference
The
to
whole
legal
fluid
immigrants.
shit
You
is
said
nuts,
illegal.
bro.
So you should walk that back.
You
said it to all your viewers. That was wrong.
But you said that he effectively has a policy.
No, I said, no, Piers, don't
No?
misrepresent
Is it
me.
a policy or
I
not?
said, in this clip, he's calling for the ethnic cleansing. It's a quote above a clip. It's a quote tweet. You should check your tweets when you put them in your document.
Do you think that's what he's doing, though? Ethnically
Yes,
cleansing?
if he's calling for the deportation of legal immigrants based on their ethnicity, yes.
Do you think
He's
that-
called it a bloody operation. You okay with 14 million people being violently removed from their homes?
Are you?
4 million American children
Okay,
losing
let me
their
ask you a
parents?
question.
It's outrageous.
Are you okay with the situation on the southern border with so many illegal people coming in illegally?
No, I'm not.
So presumably you're a legal migrant to America.
Yes, I am.
Right, so everyone has gone through the process like you.
But whether you're
Aren't they
legal or
entitled-
undocumented, you shouldn't be violently removed. And by the way, the southern border situation is a very complicated situation. It's been going on for years. Multiple presidents, multiple parties. There's no
But
easy
you would
fix.
concede under the Democrats it's been a fiasco.
No. Why would
Come-
I concede that?
Really? The numbers in the last 3.5 years?
And they were really bad under George Bush, if we go back. I mean, it's a
Who was the
multi-party.
biggest-
It's a multi. To make this into a party thing is ridiculous. In fact, last time I came on your show, you tried to do a gotcha on me and said Obama was the deporter.
Yeah, he
in chief.
was.
So clearly, Democrats aren't bad. They're on your side. They're deporters.
On that, interesting.
You can't have it both ways.
Interesting you
Piers.
raise the Obama thing.
You
because
can't have it both ways, can you?
when Obama deported 3 million
Yeah.
migrants, presumably then was he ethnically cleansing them?
If they were undocumented, that's very different, isn't it? You're legally. Look, again, to go back to our discussion about Israel Hamas.
So is ethnic cleansing if Trump's doing
Now
it?
who's cutting me off?
If-
Something can be
If
legal.
Trump's doing it, it's ethnic cleansing.
Nope.
If Obama's doing it, it's perfectly okay.
I'm well known for speaking a lot. I can say my own words. You don't need to put words in my mouth. I'm saying what I said earlier about Israel, you can do something that's legal, but I still think it's wrong. So what Obama did was legal, right? He didn't break any laws. He was entitled to deport, but I thought it was wrong, unwise, unhelpful, counterproductive, unfair. That's a different argument. What Trump would be doing is taking people who are here legally and suggesting that they get out. You know when they go after 14 million people, Piers, you're a very experienced journalist, you've covered many political issues around the world. There's no scenario in which the American bureaucracy goes house to house to look for 14 million people and doesn't end up getting innocent people, green card holders, legal immigrants, just people who look brown or have a Spanish name and getting them as well. You know this. It's going to be a disaster,
Let me
Piers.
ask- let me-
So next time you talk to
let me
your
ask you
pals, tell them not to do it.
On Springfield, do you think it's...
I think what happened in Springfield is outrageous if you condemn the incitement of violence there by Trump.
Well,
New Hitler, new Hitler. He shut down an entire town, 30 bomb threats.
actually,
It's disgusting.
there weren't 30 bomb threats.
That's what
and it turned out
that's what the local
all
authorities
the
said.
bomb threats, all of them, came from what they now believe were bots and pranksters.
And-
all of them.
and-
nothing to do with Trump.
Nothing
or
to do with
JD
Trump.
Vance.
So why did it happen? Why did it happen straight
They
after
were
he spoke?
literally, the mayor has said, actually, it turned out these were not
You know what the mayor
inspired
said?
by Trump.
You know what the mayor
This
said?
was a...
He said Trump's words are harming us. That's what he said. He's harming our
I
community.
tell you what does harm
Why
me.
don't you condemn that?
Can I please ask you a question about Springfield? I have condemned the ridiculous Haitian migrants reading cats and dogs without any evidence.
It's not just ridiculous,
Right?
dangerous.
It's wrong. There is a wider and more interesting and nuanced debate to be had, which unfortunately got completely destroyed by the cats and dogs bullshit. Which is this. When you put into a place like Springfield, I had this with Vivek Ramaswamy, he's from that area.
Yeah.
When you suddenly change the makeup of that town by putting 20% of the entire population becomes one community, brought in Haitians in that case. I've seen lots of people in the area say the Haitians have been great for working and economy and so on. Great. But it also brings with it, as we've seen in the UK, when you radically change the makeup of towns, it can have a real effect on what that town is for people, on the effect on infrastructure, the effect on schools and hospitals, etc., etc. Do you accept that this has to be handled carefully?
Yes.
And that actually putting 20% of the population into somewhere like Springfield inherently is a very tricky scenario?
So this is what worries me about you, Piers, because you ask good questions, you have these important discussions, but the framing, and my friend Brian Tyler Cohen said this a couple of days ago, your framing is very right-wing.
Why?
So when you say, okay,
Why is
I'll
it
tell you
right-wing?
I'm telling you. You said twice that they put 20,000. Who put them? Nobody put 20,000 people there. They went there voluntarily. They went there at the invitation of the local town. Do you know the local town put an ad in a paper saying, please come to our town, it's in decline, we need labour. And they went and they helped the town. And the local factory manager and the local mayor have all, as you say, they've all come out and praised them. I actually find uncomfortable that rhetoric because I think immigrants should be valued regardless whether they're hard workers. But look, people have come and said they're hard workers, they attend the local church, they're integrated in the town. There hasn't been a crime wave associated with it. When J.D. Vance uses, and here we go, Nazi-like rhetoric, and says they're bringing disease, which is what Die Stürmer used to say about Jewish people. Yeah, I find that horrible. And who put 20,000 people? Nobody put 20,000 people there. They went there for jobs. Does that cause unease? I'm sure it does. Does it radically transform a neighborhood? I'm sure it does. Should the federal government and state government be helping communities that are dealing with migrant influence? Of course they should. I'm on the left, Piers. I want higher taxes, more government spending. You're going after the wrong guy. I want more infrastructure.
Actually, I wasn't going after you. I was just asking you.
No, we agree.
Exactly.
You and I both agree there should be better infrastructure. The federal government should support these areas.
And better help with the integration process. Because I think often that's where the real problems
Agreed.
start.
Agreed. But both ways, right? Integration, as David Cameron once said, is a two-way street.
Yeah.
You don't want racists repelling new people, and you want new people understanding the ways of the world.
Yes.
Agreed. But what you don't want is a presidential candidate going on TV and just making up insane stories
I agree.
about immigrants eating. It disqualifies you from the race. I don't know how you went on and on about Joe Biden's age and dementia. And yet you have, here's a guy who went on TV. If Joe Biden had got on TV and said people eating your pets, you would have condemned him straight away.
I condemn Trump straight away.
No, you would have said get out of the race. You haven't said Trump should get out of the race. Say it now. Say Trump, get out of the race. You're too old and nuts.
I don't believe he should get out of the race.
Why? He just said eating pets. If Rishi Sunak had said that, or Keir Starmer, we would all said get out of the race. But in America, for some reason, we give Trump a pass. We grade him on a curve. We treat him like a man-child.
What about when
toddler.
Kamala Harris deliberately misquotes him and tries to pretend that he said if he doesn't win, there'll be a bloodbath? When everybody
did say bloodbath.
When everybody knows he was specifically talking about a bloodbath in the automobile industry.
Well,
he was.
I don't have time to get into all that. I don't agree with that. But just on your wider premise of Harris, even if I accept that she misquoted him, you and I both know there's normal politics where politicians lie, exaggerate, do hyperbole, do gotchas. We all know everyone does that. Democrats, Republicans, Labour, Conservative. You know that's not the same thing as a old man going on stage and screaming at the audience, they're eating your pets.
Yeah.
There's no comparison.
I agree.
There's no comparison. There's
But I
nothing
wouldn't
like
say
that from Harris, Biden, Starmer, Sunak, anyone.
But I also think it's far worse to say he's the new Hitler.
Did Kamala Harris say he's the new Hitler?
No, but a lot of Democratic politicians have used that language.
What about Trump's
if
language?
what you're saying
Hold on, what about Trump's language?
Does that make it disqualifying for them as well?
No, okay, hold on. Yes. Okay,
any Democrat politician that says the new Hitler,
Hold on.
disqualified.
Hold on.
They're kicked out of
Hold on, I'm about to answer your question. Agree. Do you believe that presidential candidates should not call the other person a Hitler?
Yeah.
Okay,
including
so
that.
Trump has called Kamala Harris a fascist, communist, Marxist. Harris has not called Trump a fascist, as far as I'm aware. I wish she would.
I think she has.
I don't think she has, but she hasn't since she became the candidate. So the person who's doing the incendiary rhetoric is Trump. He called Biden the Gestapo. Do you agree with that? Do you think Biden is the Gestapo?
No.
Well, that's what he called Biden. He said it's a Gestapo administration. I didn't hear you condemn Trump for that.
No, but I do know that there have been 2 attempts on one of the candidates' lives in post-time.
You don't know how many. You don't know what's going on with Harris or what's going to happen. She's a black woman. You don't think there's going to be death threats against
There have
Kamala
been no
Harris?
attempts on her life.
You don't think?
Are you aware of any attempts?
I don't know. I'm not saying I don't know. We didn't know. Hold on. We didn't know about many death threats against Obama until very recently.
The threats is one
This
thing.
guy always has to make it
Actually
racist
trying
like
to
immediately.
kill
She's
They
a
arrested
black
someone
woman.
the other day, just
Okay.
the other day for death threats against, I think Biden or Harris.
Yeah, that's for
Let's not-
immediately
hold on,
people want to
Piers.
kill her,
There's
right?
death
Because
threats.
that happened with
Who's gonna
Obama.
win the
Fucking retard.
I don't do predictions.
Really?
No, not after Brexit and Trump. In 2016, I got both wrong.
So you accept you're the worst predictor out there?
I mean, a lot of people got. Did you get Brexit and Trump right?
I got Trump right.
Okay.
2016. Brexit, I didn't know. I don't think I made a call. I voted Remain, but I actually was quite happy that Brexit worked. Yeah,
America's too close, and the Electoral College is too stupid. And that's a conversation for another day.
Mehdi, it's great to see you.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Really enjoyed finally meeting you.
Thank you very
Come
much.
back.
Oh my god.
And when they find 1,000 bottles of baby oil and 500 dildos, there's some suspect activity happening here.
It's like you pass by the door and see a party in an apartment, you go in, you have a drink, and then you go home and realize Jeffrey Dahmer was eating and killing people.
Some women went there thinking, oh, you know, we're gonna have a freak off.
The fact that we as a society, we got mad for a week, money talks, and bullshit walks.
Esther, please bear with me. We all know that there are pass-arounds.
Someone like P. Diddy, I'm sorry, it should be the guillotine.
If that was my daughter and I saw that on camera, it would have been a wrap for Diddy.
What the fuck? Okay, dude. Yeah, you see the Johnny Somali thing? He might be like, he's got some charges, or so I've heard from a different video. Hopefully they stick him in jail for a couple of years. He needs it.
So looks like Johnny Somali's back again with his old shenanigans in a totally different country this time, South Korea, and looks like he got his ass beat severely. Wow. So it's finally
The guy cracks me up every time, dude. Eddie Wally.
Wow.
So it's finally catching back up with him. Buddy went to Japan, started talking shit, spamming Hiroshima, Nagasaki, trying to offend everybody in Japan. Ultimately got beat up, left the country, and is now in South Korea trying to do the same shit. I mean, at this point, it's clear as day that he has a fetish for getting jumped and beat up. I'm sorry. Maybe this freaky ass boy just like getting touched by other men. I don't know.
I'm sorry, what?
Or maybe this freaky ass boy just like getting touched by
Okay,
other men.
I thought he said white boy. I was like, no. We don't claim this guy. Mm-mm.
So right there was Johnny Somali's friend and cameraman, I believe. Apparently both of them were getting jumped for talking shit and trying to disrespect Koreans, and rightfully so. Like, you can't just go to other people's country, disrespect them, dance everywhere, and act like a monkey, and expect not for the locals to eventually retaliate.
괜찮으세요? 똑같은 새끼들이 아니 괜찮으세요? 아 다행이다. 아 진짜 다행.
This man had to bust out some English, but he said, "Where your friend at?" Like, bro, what? Like, you know it's bad when you got the local Koreans out here having to talk shit to you in English. Like, honestly, at this point, all of this is just well-deserved. As I said in my previous video about Johnny Somali getting attacked by crime syndicates in Japan, he's a complete clown and an embarrassment to Americans, to Somalians, to the Muslim community, his parents, his friends. Like, nobody in their right mind wants to be associated with this man at this point. Then the following day, after this man escaped the grasps of death and got home and patched himself up, he thought he was safe. He thought everything was cool and he could go back on the street safely without getting touched, but fortunately he was wrong.
야, 소말리. 어디가? 어디가?
That means where you going?
소말리 어디가? 어디 가냐고. 어디가?
어디가? What you mean? 어디가?
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 So yeah, I'm not entirely sure who was filming. Looks like this man was coming down from his hotel room with a random guy filming him from behind. Buddy was spatting some Korean shit. I don't speak Korean, so I don't know what he said, but we could clearly see that Johnny Somali had a big ass bandage over his eyebrow ridge.
Where you going?
After
That's what he
talking
said.
shit to Johnny Somali in Korean, he shoved his ass straight to the ground. And it's just like, damn, this man is getting repeatedly bullied in public, jumped and pushed down and punched in the face by random people. I mean, my God, like, why would you not leave the country at that point? Clearly, you're not welcome there.
You crazy? My hat. 자, 이쪽으로 오세요. 거기.
Dude got rocked.
No. 핸드폰이에요? 네? 이거요, 뭐죠? 제 거예요. 우리 거예요? 모자예요? 저 어깨 다쳤어요. 누구 모자예요? 주세요.
Yeah, this man definitely got his ass beat. Like, bro, it appears that the guy who was filming him is the Korean dude over here getting handcuffed by the policeman for, I assume, assaulting Johnny. Now, I'm not entirely sure what Johnny Somali said to that man specifically, but based on the facial expression I'm seeing from the man getting arrested, he gives no fucks at all. He said, this was well-deserved. I do not care. Try me, talk your shit, and I'll do it again. And now a lot of you are probably wondering, why are random-ass Korean people attacking Johnny Somali? And apparently it has something to do with the fact that he was blatantly disrespecting
I
Korean
think you're totally
monuments,
for
symbols,
violence.
and the culture itself. As
I get
reported
it.
by this article, they say on October 9th,
I don't
Ishmael,
condone
aka Johnny
violence,
Somali,
but I'll
uploaded
watch
a
it and
video
laugh
of
at
himself
it.
kissing and twerking on the Statue of Peace in Seoul.
But this guy
Seoul,
might
Korea,
actually
that
get
is. And
himself
the Statue
killed,
of
dude.
Peace is a
It's like
symbol of
nuts.
Korean comfort women and girls who were forced
Crazy
into
fucker.
sexual slavery by the Japanese army during colonial rule of Korea from 1910 to 1945. In any case, here's that video of him twerking, kissing, and disrespecting that very important statue and symbol of comfort women in Korea. Very disrespectful.
Japan hates this thing. Right here. Yeah, make sure to fucking show it. Japan hates this thing. Tell them why. Let me sit down with this. Hold on. Japan hates. I don't know if it's disrespect. I stand with the Korean people. Bring it closer to me. Bring it closer. I stand with the Korean people.
I mean, I guess
love
like one or two
Korea,
people might care, right?
And everything that I did in Japan was for the
I'm
Korean
guessing
and the
one.
Chinese people.
I don't want to say nothing, but you know what I
See,
mean.
If I'm Korean, at this point, I'm beating his ass too. Because how do you come to my country, come to my culture, disrespect my people, then go to one of the most iconic, prolific, and sensitive statues in our entire country that is supposed to highlight the history of Japanese people raping our women, and just stand by and watch you disrespect that monument, that statue, and do absolutely nothing? Like, this is legitimately the type of shit you can get killed for. This is a very sensitive part of Korean history. To this day, a lot of Koreans and Japanese people still
How did
have
I get
tension with
lured
each
into
other.
an
And
assembly
apparently
machine?
Japan,
What?
although it's changed a lot within the last 40, 50 years or so, still refuses to acknowledge and apologize for the things that they did to Koreans from 1910 to 1945, according to Google. It was horrible what they did to that country.
The YouTuber who danced lewdly before Son Yo-sang and kissed the statue's lips asked, "Am I going to be killed just because I danced with a metal statue?" and then showed another statue that he may target. Such actions have infuriated many Koreans because the statue symbolizes all women, including girls, who were forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during World War II.
Like, I don't know what the hell is going on, but it seems as though that Johnny Somali, despite the tension between Japanese people and Koreans, is somehow trying to bond and bring them together so that they can join forces and beat his ass all over Asia. And then furthermore in the article, they say on October 17th, after that video, Johnny Somali reportedly was shown pouring instant noodles on a convenience store table after an employee Johnny stopped him from drinking alcohol. Personally, I can't find that specific video, but here is a screenshot while he was in the store eating those noodles before being punched in the face by the store owner. Like, this man is getting punched by everybody, bro. He's like a worldwide punching bag at this point. They also say Johnny was also previously confronted by Korean police for a disturbance at an amusement park, according to Korea Daily, when he announced his trip to South Korea in a now deleted tweet where he said that he planned to slap the shit out of a BTS member for no reason. I mean, clearly this man is just a menace. Like, why would you say that, bro?
Probably
like, BTS is one of the most
I'm not gonna lie.
worldwide Korean
That is
boy
unacceptable
bands. Like,
on
not only
so
are you
many
about to
levels.
get the whole ass countries of Korea and Japan on your ass, but you really want to get the BTS fandom on it too? Good lord. Mans has been banned from Japan. Apparently he's been banned from Jerusalem. I believe that's in Israel or some shit. And now he's about to get banned in Korea? Buddy, even according to recent reports, had to be arrested by Korean police officers for his own protection. Like, that's how scared they are for his life. Even a Korean guy from America had to come out with a public service announcement for Johnny Somali saying that Koreans are not to be fucked with.
Yo, Johnny Somali, just know, wherever you go, if there are Korean people, you gotta watch your back. We're not to be fucked with. You fuck with us in LA, we go on the roofs and literally snipe you, motherfuckers. You fuck with us in the motherland, you're fucking dead. Like, you gotta watch your back, I'm telling you. If you're in a 20-mile radius to where I live, be prepared to see me, like, straight up. And I'm saying this as an American. I'm a Korean American, right? But it's in my bones. When people f with Koreans, I intrinsically have this desire to make them find out. And there's no threat here, just letting you know, you f with the wrong people.
There's no threat here, I'm saying.
Yeah, so it's not looking too good for Johnny right now.
It's
Anyway,
funny,
shout out to
bro.
my Koreans. Shout out to my Japanese people. I'm sorry you're having to go through this. Like, nobody should have somebody like Johnny Somali pulling up to your countries and just trying to disrespect you crazily online like this. Like, yeah, funny enough, you know he wouldn't try this shit in Somalia. They definitely handle that shit day one. Buddy would be kidnapped, tortured, and never seen again. And that's as far as I can say, because we already know that part of the world does not play. It's like the Wild Wild West over there. But anyway, sub to the channel, turn on noties, hit the Twitter,
How the fuck do I get fluids on a belt?
Hello everybody, today we're going to be starting a brand new tutorial up and we're going to be doing a pretty big one. We're going to be doing oil processing in Factorio. I'm going to be covering two primary things in this tutorial, being oil processing and advanced oil processing, and I'll also be talking about basically ways to move fluids, ways to store fluids, and everything that comes along with those things. So without further ado, we have a lot to cover, so let's get into it. The first research that we're going to be talking about mostly is going to be oil processing, which unlocks the pump jack, the refinery pipes. It will not work. It'll give you an error message saying cannot connect systems with different fluids, which is a bit of a problem. For example, if I wanted to say run water like this, and have to at least put one of these fluids underground for each of these buildings. We'll kind of flow them into each other like so. Setup will eventually oil and some, and this may be a little halves, and of course is staying in net to make
all of this is like extremely no
water
shit
that it desires in its preferred
advanced oil process.
How to find, extract and refine oil in Factorio. This tutorial will explain you everything about this liquid, so you'll be able to create the late game science and you'll finally send a rocket to the space. Oil is one of the hardest mechanics for beginners, and many people quit Factorio because they don't understand how it works. But this video will upgrade.
What do you mean you don't understand how it works? The only thing I need... What? It's not that complicated.
The last,
I mean, it is
but
complicated,
definitely not least, is the production area. We made sure that we refine the crude oil in the refineries, then store it in the tanks and prevent any bottlenecks with cracking. So now it's the time to finally use it for anything useful. There is water and for other liquids which you deal with in the refinery. I will explain them, but I suggest to build the production on the both sides.
Wait, he just like... You can just attach it to it, what? Is that a thing? No? It gets it. Oh, okay. That makes more sense. Never mind. Shit. Okay.
Johnny Somali, whose real name is Ramzi Khalid Ismail, is an American
Ramzi Khalid Ismail. What a terrible fucking name.
live streamer known for his controversial behavior and public disturbances, which he has broadcasted on platforms like Kick and X, formerly Twitter. His stunts, often intended to provoke locals, have led to multiple confrontations, especially in Japan and South Korea. In Japan, he was arrested in September 2023 for incidents including trespassing and shouting offensive language about the atomic bombings, causing widespread backlash. His activities in South Korea have been equally inflammatory. In one incident, he disrespected a statue commemorating Korean comfort women, which further fueled public anger. Recently, he was attacked by local YouTubers in Seoul and subsequently arrested on charges of assault and drug use. Due to his behavior, Johnny Somali has faced mounting legal consequences and increasing pressure from authorities, with South Korea's parliament even monitoring his actions. Today, we are going to explain each incident of Johnny Somali. In September 2023, Johnny Somali attracted considerable public outrage in Japan by making provocative remarks on public transit. During live streams, he used terms referencing nuclear tragedies, such as shouting Fukushima, atomic bomb. These remarks drew widespread condemnation as they evoked painful memories of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the Fukushima nuclear disaster.
Hiroshima? You know Hiroshima, Nagasaki. You know why you do this? Pearl Harbor? Hiroshima, Nagasaki.
Punch this guy in the face again, please. He deserves it. What a piece of shit.
Hiroshima, Nagasaki, you know what we do to you, nigga.
His references to these events in an antagonistic manner struck a nerve with Japanese citizens, for whom these events are highly sensitive due to their historical and cultural impact. Additionally, Johnny Somali disrupted public order by trespassing onto private property, including a construction site in Osaka.
I gotta go into a bar or some shit. Damn, I'm just... Camera, Nandi. Camera, Nandi. Oh, you please?
His disruptive antics led to his arrest and formal charges of trespassing, intensifying local frustrations. His live-streamed stunts, intended to provoke viewers and gain online attention, also included inflammatory comments about Japanese political figures, which only further alienated and angered Japanese audiences.
撮影をする目的で、令和5年8月30日午前11時56分頃、株式会社河池組代表取締役なんて言ってます？あ、で、これ、OK、かけるよ。全部差し押さえないの。関係する証拠員。差し押さえ。はい。なんで4分ね。これでいい。はい。33分。はい。はい。押さえ。車バイク、携帯とか充電管、車バイク、あと身分証明、車バイク、車バイク、Yo, free Somali, hashtag free Somali.
These actions highlighted broader concerns in Japan about the lengths to which some influencers will go to gain notoriety, often disregarding respect for local
Why is it
customs
glowing?
and history. The backlash from his actions underscored the public's disapproval of such behavior as offensive
make
and
shits.
disrespectful. His behavior eventually led to an incident where a fellow foreigner confronted and punched him during one of his live streams, symbolizing the frustration many had with his actions.
Martin Luther King, yeah, Martin Luther King, whatever they say. I don't give a fuck about what's going on. I'm just a troll. I don't give a fuck about what's going on. I'm a negative nigga. Yeah, racism. Racist. Hey, racist. Hey, fuck you, nigga, bitch ass nigga, fuck you, bitch ass nigga. Whatever, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, nah, man, nigga, yeah, and what? You have to say don't grab nothing. Oh.
Anonymous sent $3 Hiroshima
Knock the
Nagasaki.
fuck
Hiroshima,
out.
Nagasaki.
In October 2020,
Oh, man, nigga, yeah, and what? You have to say don't grab nothing. Oh.
And they're like, "Rrrr." He really was. That guy was mad, bro. He like loads up.
Anonymous sent $3 Hiroshima Nagasaki. Hiroshima Nagasaki.
In October 2024, Johnny Somali's behavior in South Korea created widespread backlash due to several offensive
You
actions.
love to see it. I
One
mean,
of the
hate,
most
sorry. I meant
incendiary
hate, Rich.
incidents
I
involved
totally hate to
Somali
watch this, yeah.
disrespecting the Statue of Peace in Seoul, a memorial dedicated to the Korean comfort women who were forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during World War II. Somali reportedly kissed and groped the statue during a live stream, an act that deeply offended Korean citizens who view the statue as a solemn symbol of historical trauma and remembrance. This act sparked strong public outrage and condemnation, with many Koreans calling for his deportation. Following the incident, Somali's presence in the country became increasingly controversial, and tensions escalated further when he was ambushed by South Korean YouTuber Yunliang TV and other locals. This confrontation took place at his lodging, and both Somali and his attackers were subsequently arrested. Somali faced charges of assault and drug use as a result of the altercation.
대한민국에서 앞으로 저렇게 소말리 같은 애들 진짜 처리할 거니까 앞으로 대한민국에서 지랄하지 마. 알겠지? 소말리.
오케이. 소말리. Hey. Hey. You too. Hey, you say. Too. Somali, say something. Hey.
All of a sudden, he doesn't want to talk no more.
Hey.
I wonder why.
아니에요, 몰라. Somali, say something. Say. Somali, say. Just say.
The ongoing disturbances led to governmental attention, with members of South Korea's parliament addressing Somali's actions as a threat to public order. Lawmakers raised concerns about the impact of his stunts on South Korean society and expressed the need to monitor such cases to prevent further disturbances. This level of scrutiny highlighted the broader issue of social media influencers engaging in disruptive acts abroad for attention, often at the expense of cultural and societal respect.
Somali, say something. Somali, say.
Johnny Somali has faced backlash beyond Japan and South Korea, notably in Israel. During a protest in Tel Aviv, Somali reportedly harassed a female police officer.
Oh, you a bad. I swear to God. You a bad bitch. Taking dinner. I swear to God. I'll change your life. Baby. Baby, I'll change your life. I promise you. You a bad bitch right here. I'll change your life.
This might have been on purpose, maybe?
Stop
I changed your life.
which sparked further outrage and criticism of his behavior. His interactions with the officer were seen as part of a broader pattern of seeking shock value by targeting socially and politically sensitive situations. This incident in Israel, combined with similar behavior elsewhere, has led to increasing public and media criticism, as well as bans on some social media platforms due to the provocative and often inflammatory nature of his content. Somali's repeated incidents across multiple countries reveal a tendency to exploit sensitive topics or historical traumas for attention on his live streams, a strategy that has drawn widespread condemnation. His actions have underscored concerns over how far some influencers will go to achieve notoriety, often disregarding the cultural significance or social impact of their behavior. Johnny Somali's behavior has been widely condemned, and his actions highlight concerns about how some influencers push boundaries in pursuit of fame, often at the expense of cultural respect and public safety.
Reminds me of that one YouTuber that was like annoying somebody and saying like weird shit and getting in his face, and then he got shot. Like, yeah, who could have seen that coming?
During the first two deployments of my U.S. Navy career, the Soviet Union still existed, and the center of gravity was the Sixth Fleet area of responsibility, basically the Mediterranean Sea. In those days, we'd play cat and mouse with the Russian fleet, trying to lose them in the dead of night when they tailed us, or launching our fighters to intercept their airplanes if they got anywhere close to the carrier or other ships in our battle group. The Soviet Navy was big and capable back then, and their lethality at sea was based on the surface-to-surface missile striking power of their heavy cruisers. Their aircraft carriers were not really aircraft carriers at all in that they didn't have catapults or arresting gear, so they could only support helicopters like the Ka-25 and vertical takeoff and landing jets like the Yak-38. Unlike the U.S. Navy that built its maritime strategy around the offensive capability of conventional carriers-attached air wing, the Soviet Navy viewed what they called heavy aircraft cruisers as defensive assets that protected their strikers, submarines, and cruisers. But that Soviet doctrine didn't mean the Russians didn't possess a desire to improve their ability to conduct fixed-wing flight ops at sea. The capabilities of America's aircraft carriers weren't lost on them, especially when they saw the number of hulls and associated airplanes assembled in the Red Sea, North Arabian Sea, and ultimately the Persian Gulf during Desert Storm. Watching all of this, the Soviet Navy decided it needed something more than a helicopter carrier. So in April of 1982, the Nikolaev shipyard in Ukraine, the only company capable of building aircraft carriers for the Soviet Union, laid down the keel for a ship they originally called Riga. By the time the ship was launched in 1985, the name had been changed to the Leonid Brezhnev after the former premier. Then as it started sea trials, the name was changed to Tbilisi. And then once it became fully operational, the name was changed for a final time to the Admiral Flota Sovetskogo Soyuza Kuznetsov, which means Admiral of the Fleet of the Soviet Union Kuznetsov, named for hero of the Soviet Union Nikolai Kuznetsov, who basically saved the Soviet Union from destruction at the outset of World War II by ignoring the orders of higher command not to engage the Nazis. He placed his forces at the highest state of readiness and was able to stymie the Germans' advance into the Caucasus. To review, by the time the Kuznetsov joined the Soviet fleet as an operational asset, the ship's name had been changed 4 times. Changing a ship's name 1 time is considered bad luck according to maritime superstitions. 4 times and the ship is doomed. The Kuznetsov had an additional complication in late 1991 as the Soviet Union started to come apart and Ukraine declared independence. The new president of Ukraine told the carrier's commanding officer that the ship was Ukrainian property and should remain in port in Sevastopol until further notice. Shortly thereafter, the deputy commander of Russia's Northern Fleet arrived on board and ordered the ship to get underway, which it did, ultimately arriving in its new home port of Vidyayevo. During that trip, the Kuznetsov had to transit the Turkish Straits, choke points between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, which could have been a problem under the guidelines of the Montreux Convention, which prohibits countries from sending an aircraft carrier heavier than 15,000 tons through the straits. But since the ship was classified as a, quote, aircraft carrying cruiser, end quote, and not an aircraft carrier, and also since the ship was built in the Ukrainian SSR, and the convention does not limit the displacement of capital ships operated by Black Sea powers, Turkey allowed Admiral Kuznetsov to transit the straits. Let's look at the basic design elements of the ship, starting with the layout of the flight deck. The fixed-wing jets can launch starting from 3 different positions using the ski jump ramp on the bow, not catapults. Note right away that sortie generation is limited compared to American aircraft carriers. Unlike a Nimitz-class carrier that's capable of launching upwards of 3 jets at the same time, Russian jets on Kuznetsov can only launch 1 at a time because of the limited real estate at the launch point at the end of the ski jump. Position 3 is used for heavier launch weights that require more distance to reach the proper end speeds for flight, which is only about 90 miles per hour compared to the end speed for U.S. Navy jets coming off catapults of about 150 miles per hour. The Kuznetsov ski jump requires the Su-33s to have larger wing that creates more lift at slower speeds. Once the mission is complete, the jets come back aboard using their tailhooks to catch one of the 3 arresting wires, like other navies that operate conventional aircraft carriers. This was a first for the Russians. So now, in theory anyway, the Russians had sea-based air power like never before, and the Kuznetsov's fighters could conduct all kinds of missions: combat air patrol, fleet air defense, fighter sweeps, and close air support, effectively and at longer ranges. The carrier also carries helicopters, the Kamov Ka-27, for anti-submarine warfare, search and rescue, and lightweight transport. As mentioned, the Kuznetsov is technically not an aircraft carrier, but rather an aircraft-carrying heavy cruiser. And the cruiser part comes in the form of 12 P-700 Granite, NATO codename Shipwreck, long-range surface-to-surface anti-ship cruise missiles that are fired using launch tubes towards the bow of the ship. This is an impressive offensive capability that American aircraft carriers do not possess. Unlike most Western naval ships that use gas turbines or nuclear power, Admiral Kuznetsov is a conventionally powered ship that uses mazout as a fuel. So what the heck is mazout? Mazout is a low-quality, heavy fuel oil used in power plants and similar applications. In the United States and Western Europe, mazout is blended or broken down with the end product being diesel. Mazout is almost exclusively manufactured in Russia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and Turkmenistan. This product is typically used for large boilers for producing steam, since the energy value is high. The bottom line is the Russians chose mazout as the power source because it's cheap and plentiful, and as the Soviet Union was coming apart, they didn't care about things like shipboard habitability or the impact on the environment. Burning mazout aboard Kuznetsov causes a visible trail of heavy black smoke that can be seen at great distances, which is a tactical disadvantage among other things. Maritime experts have said that the failure to properly preheat the heavy mazout fuel prior to entering the combustion chamber may contribute to the heavy smoke trail associated with the ship. Since the carrier's boilers were first fired up, the thick black smoke has blanketed the flight deck and also permeated the spaces down below, causing respiratory issues for anyone who spends more than a few days aboard. In fact, since Kuznetsov was overall built on the cheap, shipboard life for the crew has been hellish. Over the years, badly designed engineering that's poorly maintained has led to water shortages. Some days the crew is provided running water only for 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night. Power outages, only half the toilets working, and a lack of both heating and air conditioning, which you can imagine doesn't make for decent living conditions above the Arctic Circle or during summertime in the Mediterranean. These problems in turn have cascaded and caused things like cruise spoilages and medical supply shortages. As a function of problems like these, the Kuznetsov has only made 6 deployments in more than 32 years, and never for more than 90 days at a time. By contrast, the average U.S. Navy aircraft carrier, whether conventional or nuclear-powered, deployed twice as often for twice as long during the same amount of time. Kuznetsov's maiden deployment happened in late 1995, and the embarked air wing consisted of 13 Su-33s, 2 Su-25 UTGs, and 11 helicopters, basically about 2 squadrons worth of an American carrier air wing that is comprised of 9 squadrons with upwards of 80 aircraft. But shortly after the carrier passed the Strait of Gibraltar and entered the Mediterranean, the evaporators broke and the ship had to anchor off part of Syria, unable to make water safe for human consumption. I was the operations officer for BF-102, the Diamondbacks, deployed aboard the USS America, CV-66 at that time, for what was the final cruise of that great aircraft carrier. Early in the deployment, we conducted strikes against the Serbs who were laying siege to Sarajevo, and we were successful in breaking that siege. But one day, the Sixth Fleet staff announced that we were hosting high-ranking officers from Kuznetsov, including their embarked admiral Igor Kazatonov and Sukhoi's chief test pilot. We sent 3 of our SH-60s to pick them up. The Seahawk crews later mentioned that Kuznetsov looked tired for a relatively new ship, and the interior spaces smelled like the plumbing wasn't working. They also said they only saw one Su-33 on the flight deck and it appeared to be broken. So once the Russian BFPs got aboard America, we wowed them with a 30-plane launch, including one Diamondback Tomcat piloted by the squadron's XO, the Sukhoi chief test pilot in the back seat. I was on the wing of that jet flying with a first tour lieutenant named Ted Templeton. Here's a photo of us strapping back aboard at the end of that cycle, and you can see a Russian Sovereignty-class destroyer off of America's port side. In the debrief with the Russians in the VF-102 ready room, the Sukhoi test pilot gushed, "To fly with the Diamondbacks is the greatest day of my life." And Admiral Kasatonov was having a nicotine fit. His interpreter used the expression that the Admiral's ears were curling, so our skipper let him fire up the smoke, although it was against U.S. Navy regulations at that time. It was obvious from the reaction of all the Russians present that our demonstration had the intended effect. Remember, America was not a nuke boat and was 30 years old at that time and about to be retired, but still had amazing sortie generation capabilities that had to be demoralizing to the Kuznetsov crew, whose brand new boat was anchored off of Syria, unable to perform basic functions like making drinkable water, not to mention conducting any meaningful number of flight ops. After that main deployment, the Kuznetsov didn't leave Northern Fleet waters for another 10 years, as the carrier went between maintenance periods and small-scale exercises, including one where an Su-33 accidentally taxied off the flight deck. The next Mediterranean deployment started in December of 2007 and ended about 60 days later. The carrier deployed to the Med again the following year for 3 months that time. Both of those cruises were by and large uneventful, except for a small fire started by a short circuit in January of 2009 that caused the death of a crew member due to carbon monoxide poisoning, and a 300 metric ton oil spill off the coast of Ireland during the transit home a month later. Following those 2 deployments, the Kuznetsov went into a midlife retrofit that was plagued by maintenance malpractice and white-collar corruption at the shipyard in Severomorsk. The carrier didn't deploy again until December of 2011. This time transiting close to the UK on the way to the Med. This cruise was operationally unremarkable, but did see the beginning of mechanical breakdowns and the requirement for a tow back to home port. In fact, power plant failures were so frequent that an ocean-going tug had to be added to the complement of ships in Kuznetsov battle group during any major exercise or deployment from that point forward. And more often than not, the carrier had to be towed to get where it was going. The final deployment, which began in October of 2016, started as dubiously as a previous one.
The Russians are such
with
a
one of the
fucking disaster,
Ks
bro.
flaming out overhead the ship in the Med while waiting for the arresting gear to get repaired. Following that incident, the Kuznetsov actually saw combat operations, conducting strikes against ISIS positions in Syria. But 3 weeks after their arrival on station, an arresting wire parted during an Su-33 trap. The pilot ejected successfully, but the air wing was flown ashore to a base in Syria to continue combat operations while the arresting gear issue was figured out. Ultimately, Kuznetsov's air wing conducted 420 combat missions, but only 100 of those were launched from the carrier. In early January of 2017, it was announced that Admiral Kuznetsov and its battle group would be ceasing operations in Syria and returning to Russia as part of a scaling back of Russian involvement in the conflict. As soon as the carrier returned to its new home port in Murmansk, it started an overhaul and modernization program designed to extend its service life by 25 years by upgrading the power plant and electronic systems. But ironically, that overhaul may prove to be the death blow that takes Kuznetsov out of action for good. This phase of problems began on October 30th, 2018, when one of Russia's large floating dry docks named PD-50 sank, which in turn caused one of its 70-ton cranes to crash onto the flight deck, leaving a 200-square-foot hole. One person was reported missing and 4 were injured as the dry dock sank. It took another 3 months to remove the fallen crane. Total cost of that mishap was $1 million. Russia didn't have access to another floating dry dock large enough to accommodate Kuznetsov, so they merged two smaller ones, which took another year and a half. In December 2019, a major fire broke out on board the ship due to improper storage of oily rags in the area where welding was going on. 2 people died and more than a dozen were injured in that fire.
What the fuck? Improperly stored oily rags where welding was going on. That's, yeah.
The damage to the ship was estimated at $8 million. During the summer of 2021, the vice president of the shipyard in charge of the carrier's overhaul announced that the effort would be complete by the first half of 2023 and that work was being done on a new dry dock that would be able to hold Kuznetsov. That dry dock was completed and the carrier was moved in May of 2022. But no sooner had the shipyard's president stated that the carrier would be handed back to the Russian Navy in the first quarter of 2024 and remain in service for another 25 years after that, then another fire broke out on December 22nd, delaying its move out of the dry dock for several months. Current projections are that Kuznetsov's overhaul will last well into 2024, a year longer than originally planned. Based on recent history and the state of Russia's industrial base, that projection is optimistic. In fact, the mighty Admiral Kuznetsov may never get back to sea again. Overall, it could be said that Kuznetsov's misfortunes have been that of Mother Russia since the fall of the Soviet Union. And most acutely on President Vladimir Putin's watch, the Russian military has become somewhat of a Potemkin village, an imposing facade at best, the most recent evidence being their performance in the first year since the invasion of Ukraine. The knock on Putin is he shifted his dwindling national accounts to other priorities in the training and maintenance of his existing military force. And consequently, the long-term health of assets like the aircraft-carrying heavy cruiser Admiral Kuznetsov have suffered. It's also worth noting that the same Ukrainian shipyard that did the construction of Admiral Kuznetsov also built a sister ship that wasn't completed when Ukraine declared independence. The Ukrainians had no money or desire to complete the ship, so they sold it as is to the Chinese, who towed it back to China at an average speed of 6 knots, taking the route around the Cape of Good Hope since the Suez Canal does not permit passage of ships that don't have onboard power. The Chinese named the ship Liaoning, and it also uses mazout to power the engines, but they removed the anti-ship missile tubes and freed up space in the hangar bay. The PLAN's principal fixed-wing aircraft aboard is the Shenyang J-15, and rotary wing aircraft is the KJ-88. The Chinese built a second aircraft carrier domestically based on the Liaoning's design. The carrier, named Shandong, was commissioned in December of 2019. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. If you're not already a subscriber, click the button and ring the bell so you don't miss anything. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please consider.
It was one of the most spectacular losses of the entire Ukraine war. A moment when the mighty Russian bear was revealed to be just a mere flea-bitten koala. On the 13th of April 2022, 2 Ukrainian-made Neptune missiles slammed into the side of the cruiser Moskva. At the time, the vessel was the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, a giant platform bristling with guns and anti-missile defense systems. But not for much longer. Within 24 hours of the attack, the Moskva had sunk beneath the waves, taking maybe hundreds of sailors with it. It was the largest ship lost in battle since the IRA General Belgrano in the 1982 Falklands War, and the first Russian flagship taken out since 1905. In short, its sinking was a humiliation for Vladimir Putin. A humiliation on par with the dictator falling downstairs and soiling himself. Yet, there's more to the Moskva's story than just its watery demise. The first of the Soviet Union's Slava class of cruisers, the Moskva entered service as a cutting-edge platform in the final years of the Cold War. By the time it sank, it would be a badly outdated relic in a world that had left it far behind. A world in which Ukraine was no longer a Russian colony, but a nation ready to fight for its continued independence. On the eve of the war, you'd have been forgiven for thinking that the Russian cruiser Moskva was an indestructible killing machine. In a February 2022 article titled "The Russian Cruiser Moskva Dominates the Black Sea," Forbes contributor David Axe described it as, quote, a 12,500-ton, 612-foot mobile missile battery with nearly 500 people aboard, and enough anti-ship missiles to wipe out the entire Ukrainian navy. Although little known outside of naval circles, it was an assessment other observers shared. After all, this was the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, a vessel that might have been old, but was designed for force projection, a vessel that had already seen action in both the 2008 Russia-Georgian War and Moscow's 2015 intervention in Syria. And make no mistake, on paper at least, the Moskva seemed to live up to the hype. A member of the Slava class, the Moskva was the first of 3 ships designed to do what bigger, more expensive battle cruisers could do for just a fraction of the price. Able to hit a top speed of 32 knots and travel a maximum of 6,500 nautical miles, it was relatively mobile, even as it carried with it a whole load of people. Some 476 crewmen plus 62 officers could be comfortably housed on its 186.4-meter length, although some sources claim that at the time of the sinking it was carrying over 700. It was a fairly powerful beast too, with 4 M8 KF gas turbines that could hit something like 120,000 horsepower. But it wasn't the propulsion system or the crew that once made the Moskva so feared. No, that would be its weapons. Originally intended to battle NATO vessels in open water, the Moskva came equipped with 16 tubes for heavy anti-ship P-1000 missiles.
Oh, I actually have to do it straight up?
Air missiles, mortars, torpedoes, and a whole lot of things. This included...
I didn't want to straight up do it, right?
The 64 S-300 air defense missiles, which could travel 90 kilometers and offered cover against aircraft to any ship operating in the area. It also included 2 OSA MA point defense systems to defend against incoming attacks. If that wasn't enough, there were also fully automatic 6-barreled 30mm Gatling guns capable of firing 5,000 rounds a minute and striking targets over 24 kilometers away. Not that anything was likely to get within 24 kilometers. With a radar capable of seeing things 320 kilometers away, any threat should have been sighted long beforehand. In other words, the Moskva was a mean mother, one you would theoretically assume could intercept any incoming ship, plane, drone, or missile. And that is just for starters. On top of this, the Moskva also rocked a 130mm twin-barrel AK-130 gun that could fire 40 rounds a minute, plus 533mm torpedoes that could hit submarines up to 6 kilometers away. Oh, and it also had its own helicopter deck, just in case, one capable of deploying Kamov Ka-27 military choppers. Now, for most people, this laundry list of killing methods was enough to convince them that Russia's flagship was as fearsome as its reputation, an unstoppable machine like the T-100 or ChatGPT. Yet, as we all know, appearances can be deceiving. Just as Doppio might appear a harmless pink-haired teen on the outside but secretly be the vicious gang boss known as Diavolo, so too might a formidable-seeming Russian cruiser really hide an aging rust bucket. Beneath its terrifying exterior, the Moskva was in dire need of a refit and modernization. By NATO standards, the weapons and sensors were ancient. More to the point, the structure had been made using flammable materials. Were a couple of missiles to miraculously get through and strike the vessel, then the crew might really be in quite a bit of trouble. One of the little ironies of the Ukraine war is how many symbols of Russian might were actually built in Moscow's former colony. For instance, Slava-class cruisers started life not in Russia itself, but in the shipyards of Mykolaiv, today a city bearing the brunt of the Kremlin's airstrikes. The year was 1979. The Soviet Union was still standing, Ukraine was firmly under the Russian jackboot, and the idea that Kiev might one day be independent of Moscow was as outlandish as a dog wearing lederhosen. That July, a new class of warship launched from the 61 Komarna shipbuilding plant. Known as Slava, it was intended to be the first of 6 new vessels. 6 vessels that would complement the nuclear-powered Kirov battleship class.
Am I the one that has to pick the birds?
Across the seas.
Seems like
at least 2 of these vessels would wear their Ukrainian origins proudly. The third cruiser, eventually named RFS Varyag, was known as the Chervona Ukrainia, or Red Ukraine, while under construction. The fourth was simply to be called the Ukrainian, but notice the hypothetical in that sentence. The Ukrainia would never quite get to the part where it actually became reality. This was for the simple reason that the USSR collapsed before it could be finished. The complete breakup of the communist superstate left the Ukrainia an unfinished hulk lurking in Mykolaiv's docks. Her younger sisters, the Oktyabrskaya Revolutsiya and Admiral Gorshkov, never even made it off the drawing board. That meant only 3 Slava-class ships ever sailed. The Variag, the Marshal Ustinov, and most
I think I'm just gonna sacrifice that first.
Not that it was called the Moskva yet. As the first in its class, the Moskva spent its first decade sporting the name Slava, a word that means glory, and is probably best known in the West thanks to the pro-Ukraine slogan, Slava Ukraini. Not that the Slava did anything particularly glorious during the Cold War. It tended to fight NATO battlecruisers. The ship instead poodled around the Black Sea, an impressive-looking but ultimately unnecessary platform. It would only be long after it changed its name to Moskva in 1995 that the ship finally did what it was built.
So that's a yes.
By then, the USSR was nothing but a fragment of history, a fever dream the world had finally woken up from. Once subjugated nations were now free, able to forge their own destinies. Nations like Ukraine, Estonia, and Kazakhstan. But not every former Soviet republic would be able to escape the Kremlin's orbit, especially as independent Russia began to quickly shift from a wild economic basket case to a vengeful militaristic predator. Sadly, it would be as part of this increasingly fascist Russia that the Moskva finally found its stride. The descent began in 2008. That August, the Kremlin launched the invasion of the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, leading to a short but bloody war. Over 5 days of mayhem, the Moskva led the assault from the Black Sea, using its impressive air defense system to provide cover as the Russian fleet came steaming in to destroy the tiny Georgian navy. While one errant missile would score a hit on the Moskva, it was mere surface damage. Protected by the Moskva, the Kremlin's forces annihilated Georgia's defenses, staged a landing, and took control of the city of Poti. Shortly after, Georgia surrendered. The result would be the effective Russian occupation of 20% of Georgia's territory, with pro-Kremlin puppets installed in the regions of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Just to make sure the Georgians didn't get any ideas, the Moskva stayed moored off the coast, a menacing shadow lurking just on the horizon. Yet it would be in the waters of an entirely different Black Sea nation that the Moskva would reach new heights of infamy. We're talking, of course, about Ukraine.
Got hit by a missile.
As recently as 2010, there was still hope that an independent Ukraine and Russia could be, if not friends exactly, then at least neighbors. While the Kremlin was still attempting to push Kiev around, it had also yet to launch any invasions. Publicly, Moscow even agreed to fund the finishing of the Slava-class cruiser Ukraina for use by Ukraine. But then came 2012 and Vladimir Putin's return to power. And, well, that was that for the whole Russia is a good neighbor thing. Within 2 years of Putin's return, Crimea had been illegally annexed, a breach of international law facilitated by the Moskva blockading the Ukrainian navy. Just a year later, in 2015, the vessel would be involved in yet another international adventure of dubious legality. From the waters by the Syrian lake of Latakia, the Moskva provided air cover for Russian fighter jets taking off to bomb civilians, something they did with such gusto that it's estimated 24,743 ordinary Syrians were killed by Moscow's air force. But what was a disaster for ordinary people was a boon for the Moskva. Lauded for their tireless work helping to destroy schools and hospitals, its crew were decorated. By the time the ship, waiting for repairs and refitting in 2020, was so celebrated by the Putin regime that Orthodox officials chose to carry a fragment of what they claimed was the true cross. As in, the same cross that Jesus was crucified on. Yet, while everything might have been looking good for the Moskva from the outside, beneath the surface, things were far from okay. By now, over 40 years old, the Moskva desperately needed not just repairs, but a complete overhaul and modernization. Unfortunately, the Russian state couldn't provide that. A lot of Soviet maritime industry had been based in Ukraine, and when it strode out the exit, that knowledge went with it. As a result, the Russian Navy relied heavily on Ukraine for critical components like marine engines, critical components that Kiev was absolutely not in the mood to supply to the country that had just annexed their territory. That meant the 2020 repairs did nothing to fix the Moskva's growing list of problems, its antiquity, its unsuitability for contemporary maritime combat. Had the Putin regime been honest with itself, it might have recognized that the Slava class was not fit for modern war, that there was just too great a risk that it could be sunk by determined Ukrainian resistance. Clearly, though, being honest with itself is not something the Putin regime excelled at. When the signal came in the early hours of February 24, 2022, the Moskva would be helping lead Russia's full-scale invasion from the Black Sea. Just as in Syria, what happened next would make the vessel and her crew famous. This time, though, it would be for all the wrong reasons. And so we come to one of the most iconic acts of resistance in all of history. On February the 24th, the Moskva approached the small Ukrainian garrison on Snake Island, a strategically important lump of rock in the Black Sea. Bristling with weapons and radiating menace, it beamed a simple message to the 100 or so defenders on the island. I suggest you lay down your weapons and surrender to avoid bloodshed and needless casualties, otherwise you will be bombed. To which 31-year-old Ukrainian border guard Roman Herabov would memorably reply, "A Russian warship, go f*** yourself." It was the birth of a billion memes, an early sign for Putin that Ukraine wouldn't just lie down and surrender before his brutal tactics. But not even the most optimistic observer back then could have predicted the fate that would soon be forced upon the Moskva. By April the 13th, 2022, the Moskva's crew had every reason to feel confident. The opening hours of the invasion had seen Ukraine's navy sunk or scuttled, and while the Russian army might be facing problems on land, Moscow was the undisputed master of the Black Sea. In fact, the Moskva's sailors felt
have to make
so
a prison.
at ease they were
I don't
happy
have
to
that yet.
idle a mere 120 kilometers off the Ukrainian shoreline, using their systems to give umbrella cover to the newly captured Snake Island. But for those watching the war closely, there were already signs that maybe, just maybe, the crew shouldn't get too comfortable. Warning signs that spoke to a growing Ukrainian ability to deal death on the high seas. Just weeks earlier, the Russian ship Orsk had been blown up while in port in occupied Ukraine, spewing fire high into the sky. At the time, it had been Russia's biggest naval loss in decades. Though embarrassed, pro-war commentators had deemed it a fluke hit. So confident were they in Russia's invincibility. It was this confidence that would shortly spell the end for the Moskva. Over those chaotic first weeks of war, Ukrainian forces had desperately tried various untested weapons to see their effect. Among them was the RK-360 MC Neptune anti-ship missile. Put into production following Russia's annexation of Crimea, the missile had been demonstrated in 2018, but only put into mass production in 2021. So new was the Neptune that the first batch had only left the warehouse on February the 20th, 2022, mere days before the full-scale invasion began. Since then, though, it had been successfully fired over Mykolaiv. Now several were deployed to the southern shoreline, ready and waiting in case an opportunity emerged. And on April the 13th, that's exactly what happened. Now, there are a couple of versions of the story. One in which NATO did all the hard work, and one in which Ukraine was the sole author of the Moskva's sinking. In the NATO version, European Command helped Kiev find in coordinates for the vessel. In the Ukrainian version, though, that the ship was ever detected was down to sheer fluke. That day, heavy clouds hung low over the Black Sea, so low that radar pinged out by a spotter on the shore was able to bounce between cloud and sea, increasing its detection range by dozens of kilometers. Whether you buy this or not, the result was essentially the same. Around 1600 local time, a Ukrainian unit with Neptune missiles to hand became aware that the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet was idling well within range. It said that the decision to fire took no time at all. Shortly after 4 p.m., two Neptune missiles swooped into the sky, veering out over the ocean where they hugged the choppy water surface on a deadly voyage, flying low to avoid detection. The travel time between launch site and the Moskva was 6 minutes. 6 agonizing minutes in which no one knew if the missiles would reach their target or be taken out by the ship's defenses. With cloud cover so thick, it was impossible to fly drones to find out. But the Neptune's operators didn't worry. Both missiles were destined to score direct hits. What came next played out on radar screens for Ukraine's defenders to see. The way the Moskva suddenly accelerated at full speed as if trying to flee the area. The way 4 other ships began to scurry towards it from Crimea on a rescue mission. Yet the rescue ships wouldn't make it in time. That afternoon, a sudden storm blew up, making it impossible to tow the Moskva to safety. In the tempest, precious hours were lost, hours in which the Moskva sank lower and lower and took on more water until salvaging it became impossible. The next day, April the 14th, the Moskva finally sank below the waves, taking with it anywhere from a few dozen to hundreds of sailors. Although Russian propaganda would try to claim that it sank as the result of an accidental fire, everybody knows the truth. Against all the odds, the Ukrainians had done it. With just 2 missiles, they'd taken down the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet. A symbol of Russia's invulnerability had just been reduced to a sunken wreck. Today, over a year later, the Moskva remains the largest ship sunk in warfare since the ARA
Imagine being the voice actor for this.
in 1982, and the first Russian flagship lost to enemy fire since the Knyaz Suvorov in 1905. In any form of conflict, it would have been a jaw-dropping loss. But up against an opponent with no navy to speak of, it was nothing short of humiliating. A blazing symbol of Putin's impotence broadcast for all the world to see. A symbol the Ukrainians are determined to ensure the world never forgets. Days after the Moskva sinking, the government in Kiev listed it as an undefeated site to be preserved for future generations. A reminder for decades to come of just how badly Russia failed in its war. It's a richly deserved end for a vessel that took part in its fair share of invasions and human rights abuses. But it's also something more. As a ship of the Soviet Union, the Moskva was built in Ukraine at a time when communist higher-ups tried to convince their citizens that the two nations were friends, equals, bonded together in a mutually beneficial partnership. While the use of the Moskva to terrorize and attack Ukraine has shown that image up for what it always was, a lie. A lie told by the Kremlin to justify its colonial empire, an empire the wannabe Tsar Putin dreams so desperately of rebuilding. We can only hope that in the coming months his dream goes the same way as the Moskva, reduced to nothing more than a pitiful, broken wreck, by Ukraine bravely standing up to its old overlord.
Quite enjoy these like military documentaries and stuff, dude. Not gonna lie. Bro, it's the opposite from from Stardew Valley. It's confusing me. I keep looking at the bar instead of the hoop. Straight to the stockade with you. Ooh, that sounds fun. Interesting. Ew. Guys, I know, right? Street Fighter 5 had that too, dude. How you doing, Ryuji? What's going on? I hear you. I really do. Oh, for crying out loud. I do not like this weapon. I've been saying that from the start. Second time. But I didn't finish the first time. I didn't finish it the first time, so technically it's the first time. Technically. I mean, you're a lamb that's a cult leader, right? And you have to go and kill the gods, the fake gods, or the real god, supposedly. And this part works like the Binding of Isaac or whatever. I didn't really play that game. It wasn't really my thing. Twin stick shooter without the shooting. Sadly, would love the shooting. Hilarious though. It's quite fun and funny. You missed me sacrifice a dissenter. That happened like 5 minutes ago. Yes, sir. Bon appetit. Thank you so much for the biddies. Much appreciated. I didn't want to admit to nothing. Too bad. I chose poorly. Pathetic, sniveling, vile puppet. No, you. Rude. Go for me. I'm already at the boss, so the other one's superfluous. Getting my ass handed to me. Sad. Do it as much as possible because I want the upgrades. I really need to make the outhouse. I hate that they don't do this themselves, bro. I haven't even seen crystals yet, so not right now, I guess. Give me a second. The Band-Aid is making this really hard. God damn.
bayano.
That's nasty. The fuck? Definitely don't make that.
Shalom baka.
You interrupt them, that's -1. There was something there. I don't like this weapon. Third hit moves past stuff like a lot. Yes, please. That's the gold. Dude, I can't remember what the fuck modules I have. There we go. Fuck. Forever. Got maintenance and repair? Wireless? Project? What the fuck is the fourth one? I literally do not remember. Oh, cybersecurity. Anyway, it's fucking 11 p.m. with my life. I wish you could see that and then indoctrinate or not.
Selamat kang bayam. Selamat bayam. Wow.
Ooh. Damn. All right, fellas, it's gonna be for me. I gotta go sleep soon. Thank you all so much for hanging out. I will be back tomorrow, same place, same time, every damn day of the week. Bye bye.